My ex-girlfriend opened up 2 credit cards in my name after we broke up. She ran up about $7,500 in debt, and her current boyfriend is now threatening me. Original post. My ex and I broke up a little more than a year ago. We lived together for a couple of years and I know she would have had access to my financial information. When we broke up, I moved out of the house we were renting and I thought I had everything of mine. Back in February when I was doing my taxes, I realized I could not find my folder with my previous year's tax returns anywhere. I assumed it got lost in the move and didn't think anything else of it. Last Friday, I got served for a lawsuit to the tune of over $5,000 for a defaulted credit card. When I went and actually pulled my credit, I saw that card had been defaulted since May and there was another one which had been closed since June for about $2,500. Seeing as I had no knowledge about this, I immediately disputed both of the accounts on all 3 bureaus' websites. I was able to talk with someone for one of the cards and they said it was opened in January, well after I had moved out of my old house, and the cards were sent there. I received the statements from the one card and it was probably 80% Nordstrom Macy's, 2 of the stores my ex loved shopping at. Pretty sure she was the one who opened the accounts, probably used my social security number from the old tax returns. I called my ex about it and she denied everything, even when I told her that eventually, if she had anything shipped to the house using a stolen credit card, she's going to get found out. She flipped and started screaming at me saying I can't seriously accuse her of anything and to never talk to her again. About 20 minutes later I get a call from a blocked number. It was her boyfriend threatening to make my life a living hell unless I stopped harassing her by claiming she stole my identity. He hung up but I was shaken up about it. I can see he's got some serious felonies just by looking at the public records on the county website. I'm kind of stuck here. I'm opening myself up to retaliation if I go forward with anything from someone who has charges of aggravated arson and aggravated discharge of a firearm, in addition to a few battery charges. I can't just not do anything though. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Relevant comments. Commenter. Copying this for every identity theft situation I see on here, since it seems to happen a lot, where you know who the person is who stole your identity. This is all information you can find in this sub and others. 1. Call the police. You're the victim of identity theft, plain and simple. It doesn't matter who did it or what your relationship is to them. They broke the law, now they have to face the consequences of their actions. 2. Freeze your credit. You want to make sure it doesn't happen again, take the proactive route of freezing your credit. 3. Monitor and track your credit. You need to be alerted if anyone tries opening a line of credit in your name. This gives you a way to do it for free and it shows your credit score. 4. Warn anyone else who might be a victim. This includes family members or anyone else whose social security number might be compromised by the thief. 5. Take the police report to the credit bureaus. Give them the report number when you dispute all of the accounts. Most of the time, that will be enough for them to take the accounts off of your credit. It's on the creditors themselves to prove the accounts are legitimately yours and the bureaus aren't going to get in the middle of it. A police report goes a long way in clearing up your credit. Don't take identity theft lying down, even if it's someone close to you. If you let them get away with it, get ready for 5. 10 years of bad credit, collection agencies coming after you, lawsuits, etc. For this specific case, you need to go to the police like now. This guy seems like an incredibly violent person. I would get a restraining order as soon as possible. Does he know where you live? I also would not contact your ex at all about anything else. Let it all go through the court system. OOP. I plan on calling the police. I was just kind of freaked out about the whole situation. How do I get the police report to the credit companies? Commenter 2. File a police report for the fraud. Contact the lenders and provide the police report number and jurisdiction. Let the police bank sort it out. Provide all that info to the lawyers that filed the suit and bring it all to court. Do not skip a court date. Update. I followed the advice in the comments and went to the police. Quick and painless process, I was in and out in maybe 30 minutes with a report number. I never received another call from my ex or her BF. I gave the report number to the credit card companies and the credit bureaus. I was told I didn't have to do anything else at that point but to show up to the court date for the lawsuit. I learned through a mutual friend today that my ex was arrested this morning. Apparently the county put out a warrant for her last week, pulled her over on the way to work. It looks like she was charged and released pretty quickly. Also, I learned my ex and the BF who threatened me are no longer together. I don't think I have to worry about him anymore. The court date for the lawsuit is later this month, but everything has already fallen off my report. My score has gone up probably 200 points. I'm still going to the court date just to make sure everything is good, but it's looking like all good news from here on out. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. That's awesome news. Your story will also serve as inspiration for others to pursue justice when they've been wronged. Commenter 2. Make sure you put a freeze on your SSN with all 3 credit bureaus, if you haven't done so already. Am I the asshole for hiding my boyfriend's anime body pillow while my parents were visiting? Original post. My boyfriend, M32, and I, F27, have been together for a year. He's only met my parents once over the holidays last year because they live pretty far away. They've been visiting this past week, and since he and I just moved in together, they were excited to see our new place and get to know my BF a little more. We have an extra bedroom, and this has become my boyfriend's gaming room for the most part, but we agreed when guests come over it would be a second bedroom. He really likes video games and anime in particular, so he has a lot of toys and artwork that he's collected over the years from different games and such. One thing he has is this anime body pillow that features a sexy anime girl on it. He also has a mousepad for his gaming computer that resembles a busty anime girl. Before my parents came over, I asked him to take down his toys and stuff so they could be comfortable. I was upset to see that he left the body pillow and the mousepad in place. I don't really feel comfortable with either item, but he's really into anime, so I've always kind of left it alone. But I absolutely didn't think it was appropriate to leave it there when my parents would be staying over. I took the cover off the body pillow and put the pillow in the closet, and I put the mousepad in a drawer in our room. When my parents arrived and we showed them to their room, my BF noticed the missing pillow and mousepad. Later, when we were in bed, he brought it up to me and asked why I hid them. I told him I didn't think my parents would feel comfortable with those things in the bedroom, and when they leave we can put them back. My BF got really upset. He told me that he feels like I'm ashamed of his interest in anime. He said he spent his whole life feeling like people think he's weird for being into anime, and he didn't expect his own GF to be just like everyone else. The next day I noticed him taking some of his manga books off our bookshelf and putting them into a box. I asked him why, and he said something like, "I'm putting them away so you don't have to look at them anymore." I feel really bad. I feel like I hurt him, but I just really didn't think my parents would feel comfortable sleeping in a room with those items. But now he's just acting so distant and cold, and he's not really engaging with my parents at all. They keep asking me what's wrong and I don't know what to say. AITA? Top comment. Talking mice. There's a huge difference between anime video game decorations and sexualized anime content. A busty mousepad and a sexy body pillow would most definitely make anyone feel uncomfortable. I get that it's his space too, but I think a small amount of compromise for a limited time isn't a problem at all. He might see it as you being embarrassed of his interests, but the reality is most people aren't comfortable with sexualized decor. It's not about anime at all. NTA, he really needs to have more consideration for others. OOP. That's exactly my feelings too. There's other stuff in the room that's anime gaming related that was left up, but it was more the sexual stuff I didn't feel comfortable leaving out for my parents. OOP is voted NTA update. Edit. Thank you for all of the responses. And sorry it took me a few days to update. I was waiting for my parents to leave so I could talk to my boyfriend about all of this. I read through the comments and it kind of validated something I already was feeling. Sexual decor aside, the way he acted the next day when he was putting the books away really bothered me. I ended up explaining the situation to my parents and they weren't exactly thrilled by his reaction either. I got the feeling after this trip that they don't really approve of him. Which is neither here nor there. I'm 27 and I'm old enough to make my own choices. But above everything else, my parents mean a lot to me. I never get to see them, and it was important to me that my BF would be present and treat them well while they were here. After they left, I drove them to the airport. BF refused to come. I came back from the airport and found a couple trash bags outside the door. Turns out that once I left, my BF started throwing all of his anime things into these bags. I asked why and he said something along the same lines as before, that clearly his interests weren't welcome in my home and he'd keep them in his car until he figured out what to do with them. I kinda snapped. I'd been keeping it together all week for my parents, but I had enough at this point. I told him I never asked him to get rid of his anime stuff, just that it wasn't appropriate for my parents while they were staying with us. I told him this reaction is unfair and he's being manipulative. I told him that this week was supposed to be about him getting to know my parents, but he was too fixated on this anime issue to even spend any real time with them. He then called me manipulative for making him believe that I was cool with his love for anime for the past year when I was clearly ashamed of it. He also said he didn't want to be a part of a family that doesn't appreciate anime. We went back and forth for a while and then I told him we needed space. I wasn't even really planning that, but it came out and it felt like the right thing for me. Well, he then started crying a lot and apologizing and immediately tried to take back what he said, but I was just done at this point. He left eventually and now I'm here in this apartment alone. Well, and the mouse pad and body pillow, lol. He left those behind. Anyway. I don't really know if we're broken up officially or what, but it seems to be heading that way. I'm just feeling awful and I almost wish this all happened before my parents visited because I feel like it tainted the whole trip. But yeah. Thanks for the replies guys and for helping me open my eyes a bit. Editor's note, I couldn't decide if this one was concluded or ongoing. I've marked it as ongoing for now, but if people disagree I can change it. After confronting my husband's friend about pressuring his sick fiancé into having kids, I question if I overstepped or just told the truth. Original post, September 7, 2024. Obligatory throwaway, my 32F husband, 36M, has a high school friend, 36M. Let's call him John. John is a typical jock, athletic, good-looking, popular with girls. But I've been around enough to see and hear him being questionable towards women. To the story, we were in a group of friends and I was introducing them to my new baby, 0F. Important info. I had a miserable pregnancy. The topic of having kids came up and John started saying how he and his fiancée, 32F, would be the next. More important information, his fiancée Janet is an amazing lady. Kind, smart, gentle. Recently she has been through a lot, lost her dad and her health has been terrible. Not going to say what, but she has a disease that causes headaches, weakness, dizzy spells, fainting, extreme fatigue. She has become more and more emotionally and physically dependent on him. On top of that, she, and I, come from another country. It means her family and support system are not here. Back to the situation. I asked her if they plan to have kids after the wedding, that is in 2 years. I thought that because it gives her time to recover. He doesn't let her answer and say they agreed they would only get married after having kids. I am surprised for 2 reasons. She always said she wanted kids after marriage and her health is not good. She doesn't say anything, but looks sad. I argue that it doesn't seem like a good plan, and that a pregnancy now could put her health at risk. He said her fertility window is almost closing and that is now or never. I start getting angry, and we discuss. I ended up saying he is selfish and this decision is only based on his wants and needs and is hurting her. Basically a form of abuse. The room got quiet and we ended up leaving. My husband later agreed with me, but said it was not my place to say anything. Our friends are mixed, saying someone had to say it, but that I was too harsh. I feel maybe was not my place and I was being a busybody, but after being through a hard pregnancy myself, without my family, I know how hard it is. And my husband is a great supportive guy. Meanwhile, John leaves her alone all the time to party and enjoy life. He is dooming someone that trusts him blindly into a horrible situation. AITA? Relevant comments. Commenter. What you said was the truth, but you were a little harsh. I think you were right to say it because the guy obviously doesn't care how he treats his wife. I also think you should ask * his fiancée in private how she feels about her situation. OOP. I agree that I came out too strong. I feel protective towards her. She is so sweet and nice. I feel she doesn't deserve the way he treats her. But when I say something in private, she keeps repeating that she loves her and she never met a man like him. I feel she thinks that he is out of her league or something. Commenter. Honestly, I think he knows what he's doing. There's a reason he won't legally commit to her until after she has children, and it's not a kind or responsible reason. So I don't think he's going to care about what you said or the potential health outcomes for your friend. It may be satisfying to call him out, but is it going to change his mind? OP, I also found this part extra strange. The first time we met she literally said how her dream was to have a wedding and then kids. She even repeated that recently. She comes from a Catholic upbringing, like me. It doesn't seem like a thing you change your mind about easily. Commenter. ESH, except his wife. In this conversation fight both you and John are treating his wife as if she's a child that can't make decisions for herself. He is talking over her but you are also making assumptions about their decisions based on her looking sad. OOP, I admit I should have talked to her first. But we just had a conversation about her health and she was telling me how some days she can barely make it out of bed. His smugness made me so angry, as if he knows what is best and no one can question him. Commenter. Honestly, I would be pissed if someone started talking and arguing about my health issues in public. I'm a really private person. Does the rest of the group know about her health issues? You didn't speak to her, but made assumptions. She might not confide in you anymore. He might be an asshole, but she is an adult and you could have made it worse for her. I had 2 awful pregnancies and was alone without family around, but my husband is amazing as well. I get where you are coming from, but seriously be more aware next time and show your friend some respect. And don't talk about people's medical history in front of people, ESH, obviously not your friend. OP, I see your point. The group started with some people that studied together and expanded with their SO. We meet often and are friendly. When she got sick, we took turns visiting, checking up on her when she was alone for a reason or another. Everyone seems to try to be her support system, but seem afraid to say anything to John. Commenter. He probably does and just doesn't care. John is aware that his wife isn't in a good place for kids. If he and OP's husband are such great friends, why didn't he say anything? Call out your friend's shitty behavior, people. OP, my husband is great, but everyone jokes he has a man crush on John. He was John's sidekick in school and doesn't listen when I point out some comments John makes. OOP is voted NTA but opinions are mixed. Update, September 10, 2024, 3 days later. Thank you for all the answers. I was blown away by all the perspectives and was able to see further into the situation. I reached out to Janet and invited her for a coffee. We usually talk with more people around, so this was the first time we were alone. I started by apologizing. I said I should not have said all these things in front of everyone and acted as if she cannot speak for herself. She said she was initially embarrassed, but after further thought she started questioning if it was really a good idea to have kids now and has scheduled a talk with a specialist. She said John doesn't know, and she wants to have more information before talking to him. She also said he was furious afterwards and they had a terrible fight. So you guys were right, it was not the right move, and he did blame her, saying she should have defended their position and that she knew having kids was a must for him. He also said that a woman would only be a real woman if she gave her man biological children. She asked him what if she could not, and apparently he never answered. It seems more has happened in the fight, but I decided not to pressure her and let her tell me what she was comfortable with. Lastly, she decided to take some time off and go home to her mom, and I think it is a great idea. The saddest for me was that she cried saying someone like her would never get a man like him, and that she was scared of losing him. That it was like she found a golden ticket. I held my tongue, because I personally do not think he is a prize. But again I took the advice and did not pressure further. I also had a long talk with my husband, and we are at odds. He still thinks I am overreacting and that John poops gold. I am frustrated, but not much I can do for now. Not a fantastic update, but it has only been a few days, so I will let you know if there is anything big happening. Left my fiancée due to her abusive family. Weeks later, she's gone forever. I uncovered affairs and lies that shattered our entire friend group. I've been dating my fiancée for 4 years and engaged for 7 months. We were trying to arrange our wedding for the fall of next year. To put it plainly, her childhood was horrific. Her parents were raving narcissists, and she became the scapegoat for her 2 brothers. She was abused and expelled the moment she turned 18. However, she was an excellent student and a diligent worker. With several scholarships and part-time work, she established a successful profession and became self-sufficient. The trouble, however, was that she maintained communication with her family. None of them have changed. In fact, they have grown more financially reliant on her. They gradually re-entered her life, emotionally blackmailing her for support. They're not happy about it either. They're rude, condescending and generally enjoy being a nuisance, but my fiancé can't say no, no matter what terrible things they say or how blatantly they try to intimidate her. I've always been aware of her family history and have supported her in dealing with it. However, during the last year, they've grown significantly more aggressive and disruptive. They are becoming increasingly frequent visitors to our home, leaving messes everywhere. Her mother behaves like Cinderella's stepmother. Her father consumes all of my beer and depletes half of the refrigerator, and her brothers pay visits sometimes, serving as mouthpieces for their parents. They practically trashed the place and left us to clean it up. Meanwhile, my fiancée is standing quietly in the corner, virtually shivering. I'm no fool. I understand the legitimate trauma and her desire to feel loved by them. She hopes they will eventually appreciate her. In case you were wondering, She has been in therapy for years to address this. For over 2 years, I've attempted to set boundaries and push these people away, but this is her house. She bought it. And no matter what my financial or emotional contributions are, she won't let me have a say in who comes over. She recently informed me that she wants to gain their acceptance, that they were correct about her, and that she must improve for their sake. We've had several emotional chats, full of tears and begging, in the hopes that she'll take action to improve. However, she is an adult, and I cannot force her to do anything. I love her, but I can't help but be resentful of what she's doing. It's heartbreaking to see someone you care about, who deserves so much better, blatantly ruin themselves for individuals like her family. I've tried numerous times to help her escape their grasp, but I have to think of our future. What happens when we have children? What happens if she is postpartum and invites them over? What if there is a medical emergency or our funds are short and they continue to demand money? This is the in-law family from hell, and I'll be unable to avoid them. Tomorrow, I'll inform her that I want to postpone the wedding until definite boundaries are created. If she resents it, I will leave. I can't take it any longer. I refuse to see this creeping devastation. Update. I spoke with her and everything went as expected. I'm now staying in a motel for a few days while planning my long-term move. There's still a lot going on right now, but perhaps by next week I'll be able to compile everything into a single update. Update 1. The night after I posted the first post, I decided to have a conversation with my fiancée regarding her family. However, she returned from work early the next day, and as I was already off that day, I started the conversation earlier than I had intended. Essentially, I warned her that this arrangement was unsustainable. I did not feel comfortable marrying her because of how involved her family is in her life, and I certainly did not feel good bringing a child into the world with them present. I didn't want to advise her to break off communication with them totally, but I did ask for strong restrictions on when they could come over and what they could do around the home. I also requested couples treatment before getting married. She was not pleased. She simply stared at me fiercely as I spoke, then began shrieking after I finished. She said I didn't understand their relationship, but it worked for her. I told her they were abusive users who would bleed her dry, and I had never seen them treat her with kindness. She reacted by claiming she simply needed to work harder for people to appreciate her. I basically yelled back that a child shouldn't have to beg, plead, or work to be loved by their parents. Finally, I informed her that either she established limits for them or I'd walk. She was furious, and as I was living in her home, I was booted out. I've been staying at a hotel for the past few days and my belongings have been taken out and stored. Frankly, it's been fantastic. I want to spend a few weeks with my family around mid-July before commencing house shopping on my own. I've spent the last few days relaxing, catching up on movies and video games that I hadn't had time for, and returning home to a peaceful room without her family tearing it apart. Things finally came to a head yesterday. We've had almost no contact since she kicked me out, but I know her family loves to spend the afternoon at her house every Saturday, and she generally uses me as a shield from their abuse. In a pretty selfish action, I simply left my phone muted all day and listened *Disco Elysium*. I knew she'd call for help with her family, but at this point sheer hatred had set in, and I didn't want to deal with her concerns. By the end of the night, she'd texted me over a dozen times and left 2 desperate voicemails urging me to come home. I decided to go over and check on her. Long story short, she was sobbing in the living room, and when I approached her, she literally crushed my back, clinging and crying. I waited for her to calm down before asking what had happened. Apparently, her mom and brother stopped by to demand money and utter awful things to her. She asked me to come help, but I had been ignoring her. When she sought to get assistance from one of her pals, everyone essentially said no. That's when it all clicked for her, and she eventually kicked her family out. But not before they said some truly terrible things to her, which I will not repeat. She repeatedly apologized to me and told me to come home. I told her openly that I had been harboring strong feelings of anger toward her for some years, and that while I loved her and knew that it was trauma rather than her being outright abusive, there were huge issues that needed to be addressed before we could move forward. First, she sells the house and relocates. We make nearly the same amount of money and plan to buy a property together. I am an adult man, and I will not live in a home where I have no equal agency. Second, her relatives will never enter it. They will never come over, and if they do, I will treat them in a hostile manner. Third, she sees a new therapist and we begin premarital counseling. Fourth, she never forced me to interact with her relatives again. Fifth, we will maintain little communication with her family for the time being, but make no mistake. We are moving toward complete no contact from her end. I told her that I loved her. We've been together for a long time and have wonderful memories, and I know she's been abused. But these conditions cannot be changed. If she has a problem with any of them, we will have to part ways. She informed me she's known for a while that her family is poisonous and unhealthy, and she wants to make changes, but some of them will take time to manifest. For the time being, I plan to stay in the hotel till I return to see my family. She is welcome to come over, but I have made it obvious that her home is not a place I want to be. We both have the day off tomorrow, so we'll spend it here and maybe go out. This is definitely not over yet. But I may not publish again until mid-August or so. Update 2. Despite my best intentions to not update until much later, with the hopes of improving my relationship with my fiancée and her establishing boundaries with her toxic family, we have now split up. Essentially what occurred was that after last weekend, when I left her to deal with her family on her own, she appeared to fully understand the issue and was open to adjustments, including limits and a possible transfer. We spent Monday and Tuesday hanging out at my hotel before I returned to my family for a few weeks. She was scheduled to come over the previous night, but her texts were pretty ambiguous. She arrived considerably later than usual, and I sensed something was wrong. She basically went off on me, calling me abusive, overbearing, extremely demanding and unsupportive. It took me 5 seconds to realize she was reciting a planned speech from her parents. To be honest, I was so irritated at this point that, despite taking a tremendous risk on her, I chose to be a jerk about it. I questioned if her relatives had told her to say this. She said they proposed it, although she came up with it herself. Sure. I requested her to explain in detail what I had done wrong. She stated I was parasitic on her. I reminded her that I was paying 50/50ths for her mortgage, electricity and groceries, and that I own and pay for my own car, as well as a job that pays the same as hers. Unlike her parasitic parents, who demand cash every week and loot the kitchen on weekends. I advised her to try again with something better. She appeared flustered and said I was attempting to isolate her. I smirked and informed her that I had always supported her many friendships, which she ended on her own since no one wanted to deal with her family or be used as a shield like me. At this point, I was nearly demanding to know why she was so determined to wreck her life for these individuals. She simply shouted that I don't understand her family and that she's just trying to reclaim their affection, and she was really ranting at that point. It's really incredible to see up close. I went to a few subreddits to get perspectives, and if you're familiar with them, you'll see how people who have been abused by their own family can be so completely broken that it wrecks their brain to the point where they believe they are the problem and deserve the abuse. That was exactly how she was. Completely shattered and unable to accept help. She didn't want to improve. She only wanted to get worse. The knowledge hit me hard, like a truck. I felt like a fool for attempting, even though it was what I was supposed to do in the first place. She was virtually insane by this point, and I was simply mentally weary and needed her to go before the cops arrived. She eventually went, but a few concerned neighbors checked on me. Some of her friends are aware, as they have messaged me to inquire about the situation. I told them the truth. I needed to be alone to think about what to do next. They have now revealed that she has delivered similar rants in response to their concern for her. One had even heard that she could lose her job. She is certainly taking a mental break from my understanding. She is now fully alone, plunging into a miserable, lonely existence. There's nothing I can do for her at this point, and as selfish as it may sound, I'm simply relieved it's over. Update 3. Things had mostly been wrapped up, but there remained a few loose ends. I absolutely failed to change my mailing address, which I should have done right away, so a few crucial things were delivered to her residence. I had to go get them, as well as a few other items I had left behind that I had decided I wanted to keep. She was being difficult and did not answer messages about them, so I had to go retrieve them myself. I had brought a common acquaintance just in case. Fortunately, she was cooperative in allowing me to retrieve my belongings, which was not a big deal. Everything else was another story. She said a lot of unpleasant things to me, including how she was already sleeping around, how pleased she was that I was gone, and how she was finally free from me. She said she'd be so much better off without me. All typical insults and dreadful things you'd expect from a bad breakup. You know what? It was clear that it was a scripted script from her family, and you could tell she was miserable. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The house was a mess. She wasn't even yelling. She sounded drained and broken as she said it. She didn't even smile as she spoke. Her face was distorted with hatred and wrath. She wasn't the lady I knew anymore. That individual was gone. When I was about to leave, she was still going on. I got fed up and told her something like, "Congratulations, your friends are gone, your human shields are gone, your engagement is over, and your support is gone. Anyone who has ever treated you with dignity is no longer alive. It's only you and your family. I hope you're content while they bleed you dry." It most likely did not go precisely as described, but something similar. She simply stood there, stared at me indifferently, and walked away as I walked out the door. Tiffany, a common friend, inquired about my well-being as we were leaving. I reassured her that I was and explained that I was only preparing to return home next week. She also confirmed that she had heard that my ex had been fired for failing to show up for work for several days and effectively disappearing. They're going to try an intervention next week and have asked if I can participate, but I'm not postponing my trip because frankly, I just want a clean break. I know that if I continue involved, I will only see a steady decline into either a complete breakdown or suicide. I simply cannot do that. Despite this, I'm excited about the future. I realized I overlooked far too many red signs in the beginning. Despite all that has transpired, I am confident that I will do well. I expect this to be my final update. I'm still in town till Sunday afternoon, so something may happen while I'm here, but it won't be exciting. Update 4. I'm currently in my home state visiting family, reacquainting myself with the place. I've decided to stay here permanently and have begun the long process of looking for properties in the region. I've been doing well, going out with friends and family. A handful of mutual friends with my ex-fiancée have told me what's been going on, and things appear to be improving. The intervention was supposed to take place on Sunday, but Saturday night after her family paid her another visit, she called pals in a fit of mania. It appears that she has now realized how horribly she screwed up. It was a full-blown panic episode and meltdown that landed her in the emergency room. Needless to say, she finally admits how miserable she is and how horribly she has messed up her life. Apparently, she attempted to phone me, but I had blocked her. She still has a job, and the information about her losing it was incorrect, but she is hanging by a thread there. Her supervisor has effectively told her to take a few weeks off work to clear her mind. Her friend circle is quite close. My ex was a really helpful and supportive friend, so it's understandable that her friends are going to such lengths to aid her. However, there is an implicit agreement that if she returns to her old ways, they will all allow her to sink on her own. She's doing as well as can be expected, however her family has continued to bother her with phone calls and messages. They attempted to visit her residence but were strongly redirected by friends and neighbors. I hope she understands the type of support system she has. As trashy as family arguments generally are, her parents and brothers have taken it to Facebook, which, according to what I've heard, has worked to my ex's advantage. It has exposed their behavior to a larger audience and appears to have silenced them for a short time. Finally, she had one of our common friends deliver a note to me. Essentially, she was confessing that all of the horrific things she said to me were lies and that her family had pressured her to say them, which I had known all along. She apologized for how things ended and hoped we could reconnect someday. Unfortunately, I had to explain that we needed to stay apart for good and that she should focus on her recuperation. I informed her that while I still care for her and wish her the best, this was our final goodbye. The message appears to have been sent and her friends are assisting her in processing it. She has a long way to go, but I hope she finds peace as I do. Comments. OOP regarding the ex's parents' opinions. OOP, they simply tried to play the "your daughter is ungrateful and cruel" card with close friends and family, only for a slew of people to call them out on their actions. Take this with a grain of salt, as it is unsubstantiated, but according to one source, in retribution, people began phoning one of the brothers' workplaces and leaving critical reviews on their Facebook page, airing all of the dirty laundry. It's not going well for him, although this is unconfirmed. Top comment. Her parents and brothers have escalated their family feud on Facebook. There were no falsehoods discovered. I applaud OOP for avoiding that disaster as much as possible. It's much better for this woman if she understands that her decisions have real repercussions, and if she doesn't want such consequences in the future, she needs to perform serious self-improvement. Update 5. I've been doing pretty well since I returned home. All of my belongings arrived safely, and I am now living with my family while I look for a new home. I've set up my employment here and have been back at work for the past week. I occasionally come here to comment and post, but that is all. Unfortunately, despite the best intentions of my ex's friends, the scenario has now ended in the worst possible way, and the friend group has been fractured as a consequence. My ex took her own life. Almost everything I'm about to say I learned last night. Since I left, her friends had been assisting her in getting back on her feet, encouraging her to seek better therapy, establishing boundaries with her family, and getting her out of the house. They definitely went above and above. Tiffany, the friend who was there to help me the last time I spoke face to face with my ex, became suspicious when she noticed my ex being touchy-feely with her boyfriend Daniel, while they were hanging out at her place. I don't sure exactly when things progressed, but Tiffany ultimately got hold of her boyfriend's phone when he was sleeping and discovered highly sexual messages between him and my ex. These texts were more than 5 months old, which surprised me greatly. Tiffany clearly lost it and informed everyone. Nobody could have predicted the drama that unfolded. Daniel, Tiffany's now ex, threw another member of the friend group, Joseph, under the bus, alleging he had covered for him. Joseph's girlfriend in turn dumped him and kicked him out of her home. A friend group of about 9 people, including my ex, nearly imploded. Tiffany and Joseph's ex are the only ones that continue to communicate. Mind you, when I was being told all of this, I was informed that, despite the fact that I had been gone for almost a month, everything had occurred within the first week of my absence. My ex immediately lost her entire support system and was accused of everything. This simply exacerbated her already deteriorating mental health. Of course, everyone was curious as to why she had done such things to one of her closest friends. She simply stated that they had become close and that he was a terrific support system for her. Of course, she'd told her family about him, and they approved of him over me. She asked him over the night I left for the motel. Apparently, her ultimate goal was to leave me for him. He wouldn't leave Tiffany for her, and he despised hearing about her family, so he certainly wouldn't pursue anything other than a hidden affair. I expected to be much furious than I was, but I had already started to move on. I had just had a comprehensive health exam at my new doctor's office and received a clean bill of health, with no STDs, so I didn't have to worry about that. Getting outraged would be counterproductive at this stage. I was told that I was informed late because no one knew how to break the news to me, which is understandable. So yep, my ex was absolutely shunned, even by Tiffany's ex, who simply disappeared. She was blocked and left to cope with her troubles on her own. Tiffany simply knew that she had lost her work for good and spent all of her leisure time with her family. They had finally triumphed, in a sense. It was discovered 2 nights earlier that she had committed suicide at home. Her relatives discovered her. When the medical team arrived, one of the old friends from the neighborhood showed up. Her family was there and they didn't seem to care. Tiffany contacted me last night just to let me know. There were other messages, and she asked me, as gently as possible, if I wanted mine for closure. I honestly don't know what to do about it. I'm experiencing a lot of mental whiplash right now. I never knew this woman. I've had to acknowledge over the last month, since returning home, that she was abusive in our relationship because of everything she put me through with her family. Now it appears that it was a ploy to drive me away so she could be with another man who her family appeared to like. This confuses me even more, because what did he have that I didn't? Did they simply love watching her life fall apart? Was there anything real about her? Was there anything real about the folks with whom I spent years of my life? Returning home was the best decision I've ever made, and I now have complete evidence of that. I can begin therapy to work through this issue, spend time with a group of individuals who are truly trustworthy in person rather than online, and have relatives nearby for support. But yes, this will be with me for a long time. Comments? Comment. Do not read the letter. It will do you no good. Give it to a therapist to read, have them reseal it in another envelope and let them decide whether or not you should read it based on your mental health. Or if it should be unread and burned. OOP, I'm not interested in the letter or anything related to them. It's time to go on with my life. Fooled my cheating wife into thinking I was unfaithful, then ghosted her on Christmas Day after meticulously planning a year-long revenge. Here's the backstory. My future ex-wife is my high school sweetheart. We started dating in 1992, when we were both 17. We're both 45 and have been together since. She is the only woman I've ever been with in my life. We married 5 years later, at the age of 22, right out of college. A year later, we welcomed our first 2 children, both boys who are now 22 and 17. I gave her 23 years, built her a home, and worked tirelessly to provide her the life she desired. Sure, we had our issues, but what marriage doesn't? Even in the darkest of situations, we found a way to persevere and emerge stronger, making the revelation of her affair all the more startling. Flashback to March 2020. I had a feeling something wasn't right. We had been in a funk for approximately 2 months before. I was still unable to move while recovering from reconstructive knee surgery after tearing my ACL in the fall of 2019. At the time, my knee had only around 55% range of motion, which hindered my ability to conduct a variety of household tasks. I was out on workers' compensation because I was injured on the job, so I couldn't do my usual housework. My sons did their best, but duties that only I could do had to be postponed, or my wife had to take them on, which she detested. Things also came to a standstill in the bedroom. It had already slowed down before my crash, but in my current state, it came to a complete stop. During these months, Sue, we'll call her that, spent more time after work mingling with co-workers. From November 2019 until March 2020, it was a reoccurring event for her. Naturally, I rejected it. I'd had no reason to be concerned or wary of her over the previous 23 years. She had her friends, I had mine, and we had mutual pals. I could hang out with my friends all the time without issue. Everything was above board. However, in January of that year, I started to notice something unusual. Sue was growing increasingly distant. Sure, we were in a funk, but she had never denied me affection until that time. The usual hugs and kisses came to a stop. Her phone, which had previously been nearly tethered to her hand, was now secure. She was becoming more private, despite the fact that she was frequently sharing DIY ideas, recipes and memes with me. Her interactions with me became more snippy, as if she couldn't be bothered. So we're now in March. COVID has arrived, and New York City is under lockdown. Our chosen vocations are essential, thus neither of us had to work from home. I had just been cleared to return to work after being out for 5 months and I was eager to go back to it. 5 months of sitting on my ass, rehabbing my knee and being unable to do physical things drove me insane. For context, I adore physical activities. I'm an active martial artist who goes to the gym 4 days a week, in addition to all of the housework I handle. Within a week or two of the lockout, my soon-to-be ex-wife informed me that she would need to resume working extra hours. I didn't think much of it because of her profession. I expected it to be every other day, but it was every day, for more than an hour or two. She'd get home 3 or more hours later, shower, spend some time with me and our 17-year-old son. Our 22-year-old was staying with his girlfriend across town, and then go straight to bed. As my knee recovered more movement, we continued our intimacy, but as one might anticipate, she was not intellectually or emotionally present as I quickly noticed. By early April the picture was getting clearer for me. All of the signs led to her having an affair. That was the moment I realized I needed answers. I scoured the internet for indicators of adultery in a partner and she checked almost every box. My search query grew to how do I find proof? I started with her social media, looking over her Facebook posts from several months ago. It was the usual, images of us and our sons, some with her friends, and some from her nights out with coworkers. These images included a mix of her closest coworkers and a few folks I had never met. But one thing stood out. Practically every picture featured the same guy. Every photograph he appeared in showed him standing uncomfortably close to her, his arm on her shoulder or his hand on her lower back. Far too close for a guy I'd never met. Needless to say, that left a nasty taste in my mouth, but it was far from the worst of it. The worst part was realizing he was her Facebook friend and Instagram following. So naturally, I searched for his Facebook account, only to discover that I had been barred. Why the hell was I unable to view this guy's Facebook profile when he was friends with her? At this point, I was in full Batman detective mode. I wasn't even attempting to deny it. I knew she was cheating on me with this man. My goal became to learn how long it had been going on. That was exactly what I did in April and May. Until then, I had no idea how much data could be pulled from phone records, text messages and email archives. We have a family cell phone contract, so I had access to a significant amount of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's data history revealed that the 2 most common phone numbers she used between October 2019 and April 2020 were mine and one I had never seen before. Can you guess whose number it was? A quick Google search revealed that the individual in the photographs was the identical one who had blocked me on Facebook. We'll just name him P since that's who he is. The picture is clearer at this point, but many of their discussions and texts were disjointed, so she deleted a big number of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this person. But the statistics didn't prove it. I needed more evidence. At this point, I told my best friend Oz what I had discovered. He asked if I had questioned her with facts. I said no because I felt it wasn't enough. That's when he told me of an app I might use to track her communications in real time. I won't mention the name here because of the rules, but I installed it, linked it to our data plan, and waited. Within days, I saw it. A text exchange between the two of them, discussing how much fun they had the night before and making plans to do it again that weekend. Boom. Gut punch. To say I was devastated is an understatement. I suppose that was my D-Day. For the next 2 days, I was completely broken. I purposefully distanced myself from her. During the 2 days after D-Day, she noticed something was wrong. She tried to console me and ask what was wrong, but I ignored her and walked away. I couldn't even look at her. This woman to whom I had given 23 years of my life, everything I could as a husband, and she had left our marriage for a man barely 5 years older than our eldest child. By the 3rd day, I was no longer depressed, but enraged. I emailed Oz to inform him that my suspicions were confirmed. He asked if I confronted her and I responded no. I sought retaliation. I didn't just want to divorce her, I wanted to destroy her. I planned to undermine her life and ruin her. It would take some time, but I had a plan. In my studies and research on infidelity, I came across a statement that struck a chord with me. The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability. That was going to be the core of my strategy. I meant to make her life hell on wheels while quietly planning my escape. So it's early June and I still have the app installed. Almost every night I gather as much data as possible. I see their back and forth texts. They talk like they're in a full-fledged relationship, sexting, flirty romantic things, nudes, the works. At that point, I stopped looking at anything and focused solely on gathering information and cataloging everything on my personal server. Meanwhile, I began engaging in odd behaviors. I began leaving at irregular hours and arriving home much later than she did. I spent more time on my phone than usual while with her, and when she asked what I was doing, I just replied, "Just stuff," and put it away. I also changed the login credentials for everything so she couldn't get into any of my stuff. Throughout our marriage, we had never kept anything from one another. However, about the time I believe her romance started, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, blaming recent security breaches. Yeah, that's an excellent reason to conceal an affair from your husband. I notified Oz about my plans, as well as my older sister and 2 other close friends. These are the people I trust with my life, and I have sworn them to secrecy. To clarify, Oz and I have been friends since we were children. We've known Joey and Na, our other 2 friends, since high school. Keep Na in mind, she will have a role later on. In July, my soon-to-be ex-wife was absolutely paranoid. She was texting and calling me more frequently, asking whether I'd be home when she got back, when I was coming home, what I was doing and so on. I could see the seed I planted in her mind a month ago starting to sprout, notably in her interactions with P. She was confiding in him, expressing her worries and perplexity, and warning him that I was becoming cold and distant. This woman has a lot of nerve. During these interactions with P, she even suggested that they stop meeting at our house since she wasn't sure if I'd just show up, confirming of course that she had brought this guy into my home. Thanks, Sue. P asked her in that conversation if she was afraid I was cheating on her, which irritated her. I can't tell you how much pleasure and laughter I had from reading that exchange, my cheating wife arguing with her affair partner about whether she was angry at her husband for perhaps cheating on her. Oh, how ironic. Please bear in mind that I was not hooking up with anyone. When I left the house, I was usually at Oz's or Joey's, drinking, watching fights and socializing with my brothers. Or I was at my big sister's house, hanging out with her and my brother-in-law, who is like an older brother to me. My sister is 52, and her husband is 58. I had told them about my soon-to-be ex-wife's infidelity, but not about my plan. I couldn't risk it because my brother-in-law is a bit of a blabbermouth. Moving forward to October, things started to heat up. Sue was completely aware that I was intentionally drifting away from her after 3 months of my false romance. I hadn't touched her once between the day I carried out my plan and the day she confronted me, October 20th, 2020. No embraces, kisses, or attempts to initiate intimacy, none. Not that she needed it. She still got it from P, whether at his place or in a hotel. That afternoon she called me at work, which was not unusual before anything began, but it hadn't happened in a while. She implored me to come home immediately from work, saying she had something essential to tell me. I won't lie, I partly expected her to admit her infidelity. However, she didn't. Instead I returned home and asked her whether I was furious with her. The nerve. She commented that I'd spent much too much time away from home, hadn't shown her any affection, and that our intimacy had faded. She expressed fear that I was driving her away because of my animosity for how she treated me when I was rehabbing my knee. Then came the punchline. She gasped and asked whether I was cheating on her. Folks, I fell to the floor laughing hysterically. And by hysterically, I mean like the Joker laughing so hard. On the surface, it appeared to her that I was laughing at the prospect of being unfaithful, but I was actually laughing at the irony of the circumstances. I was on the floor for over 2 minutes, weeping and banging my fists in hysterics before I could calm myself and react. I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head and did not speak. I got up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head and started settling in for the night. Later that night, as I was in my office, I wanted to see what she was messaging P about what had just happened. I opened the app, and sure enough, they were texting in real time. She told P, "I know he's cheating on me. I questioned him tonight and he simply laughed in my face. He collapsed on the floor and laughed for almost 5 minutes. It did not take 5 minutes. He no longer cares about my feelings. I'm not sure how or why, but he's left. I realize I've lost him. This is karma, and I know it." The smile I had on my face while reading must have looked like the Cheshire Cat. Her heart was breaking. P tried to console her, telling her that if I cared enough about her, she wouldn't have had to turn to him for what I wasn't giving her. Her statements, however, suggested that she was now having doubts. She had the audacity to quit our marriage because I was unable to perform my duties as a husband due to a real injury, and she pursued the affair for approximately a year. But was the thought of losing me to another woman enough to make her reconsider? What a weakling. Throughout this, I was also implementing the second component of my strategy, getting my finances in order. In September, I met with a family attorney to start the divorce process. With the material I had gathered up to that point, I was convinced I could nail her to the wall in a divorce case, especially because New York is an at-fault state. My lawyer advised me to prepare all of my accounts in anticipation of the approaching asset division. I went a step further, secretly removing all of my funds from our joint account and deposited them into my own. As part of the second phase, I began searching for an apartment. Now it's November, and my behavior hasn't changed. In fact, I have turned it up. This is when my friend Na enters the picture. Na and Sue were never close. I met Na during my freshman year of high school, 2 years before meeting Sue. Sue saw Na as a threat, even though she was my closest female friend. Sue always gave Na an implied "I don't trust her" vibe. Sue never addressed it directly, but it was obvious to everyone paying attention. Na, on the other hand, felt no affection for Sue. Na pointed out early in my relationship with Sue that she was imposing herself on our social circle, but I did not do the same for Sue's friends. That infuriated Na since she knew why Sue was doing it. Sue still doesn't have any male friends in her circle, save for P, but Na is the only female in mine. Na had been kept overseas because of the epidemic before returning to New York City on November 3rd. Oz, Joey and I decided to celebrate her return by hosting a modest dinner and drinks party at Joey's house. There were just 5 of us: Oz, Joey, Joey's wife, Na's sister, Na, and me. We followed the CDC's guidelines because we take COVID seriously. Na, being the mastermind that she is, concocted a sinister scheme to enrage Sue. She suggested we take some photos of Sue and P, similar to those I found months ago, and post them on Facebook. This is precisely what we did. Sue learned about it on the 5th, when a few friends viewed my updates and saw how uncomfortably close Na and I appeared in the images. Sue was perplexed by this, especially because she still suspected I was cheating. I'm almost convinced she wanted to accuse Na, but she knew Na had been in Europe for the majority of the year. Still, it didn't stop her from attempting to dress me down that night since, as she described it, I was handsy in the pictures. I recognized this as a good opportunity to deliver the opening jab for my knockout punch. I inquired, "So how about the images of you and P from last year? He was really handsy in them, but did you notice how upset I was about it?" Deer in headlights. It was the first time I'd mentioned the guy's name in all of this. The hamster wheel in her head began to whirl in real time as she struggled to understand those photographs. She had no idea I had seen them up until that time. That's how rarely I use Facebook. When I do, it's like an event for others, which is why the images with Nina drew so much attention in our networks. She explained them away. "He's like that with everyone. He's just a very friendly guy. I get how it appears, but there is nothing there. I am sorry if the photographs offended you. I'll erase them." No, the photographs were not the cause of my problems. The thought of you banging this guy for a year while lying to me about working extra hours and hanging out with friends has destroyed me. However, as Lieutenant Worf from Star Trek TNG memorably stated, vengeance is a dish best served cold. Sue became overly attached and attentive to me following that night, which was frustrating. She'd want to begin warmth and closeness, but I'd stop her at every opportunity. I was constantly recording whatever she said to P. By this point I had gone entirely numb. Any motivation I had to save my marriage was gone. I checked out on the day I executed the first phase of my strategy. She was telling him that I had gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do and that she believed I detested her. I did. Then she dropped the bombshell. She announced she could no longer see P. Her guilt was intense, and she felt like punishment was strangling her. She couldn't risk losing me. She claimed to love P deeply, but she was still in love with me and sought to save her marriage before losing me. No, my sweetheart. You were about 8 months too late for that. P lost it, saying beautiful things like, "He doesn't love you the way I love you. You are making a mistake. You can't just dismiss me like that." That text chain was their last until around 3 weeks ago. Sue was in uncertainty for the rest of November and December, trying to figure out where my headspace was while also unsure whether I was being unfaithful. Meanwhile, P was constantly blowing up her phone. But she did not respond. I noticed her checking her phone regularly, but she quickly set it aside. Meanwhile, phase 2 of the plan was officially finished. The divorce papers were completed. I'd found a studio apartment in Co-op City, a neighborhood recognizable to New Yorkers, and signed a 2-year contract. All of my money was in my own account. I was ready to throw my haymaker. Now it is Thanksgiving. My oldest son and his girlfriend were throwing a modest reunion for our immediate families, which included my oldest, his girlfriend, her parents, she is an only child, myself, Sue, and our youngest. We had a great night. My oldest girlfriend is training to be a chef, and she did all of the cooking herself. Let me tell you, the chick can cook. To give the impression that nothing was wrong between Sue and me, I expressed affection for her several times that evening, including kisses on the cheek, charming small hugs, and wrapping my arms over her shoulders from behind. She was aware of and loved the gestures. Keep in mind that this was the first time I had touched her since kissing the top of her head the night she confronted me in October, roughly 2 months prior. I won't lie, I was horrified by it, but I had no choice. I could not jeopardize the plan. My distancing from her in front of our sons, my oldest's girlfriend, and her parents would raise alarms. My youngest elected to spend the night with his elder brother, so Sue and I returned home. On the drive home, she thanked me for being so nice to her and said, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to stop myself from busting out laughing again and answered, "I know, I just need time." For the first time since spring, we had sex that evening. I thought, what the hell? With what I'm going to do, I might as well get some work done before eliminating her from my life. I won't get into specifics, but it wasn't love. When I finished, she was a ball of flesh laying there, trying to figure out which way the truck that had run her over had gone. There will be no cuddling or anything afterwards. To her amazement, I just got up, washed, and fell asleep in my office. However, I wore a condom for the first time in nearly 2 decades. She was perplexed, but she didn't ask questions. I had no intention of going raw on her, knowing she had done so with P for months. I awakened the next day and launched my handy surveillance program. For the first time in weeks, she responded to P. The dude went full Neela. He expressed his feelings for her, saying she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a dying flame in me, and that she had been in prison with me for 23 years and deserved to feel the love and affection of a man who adored her. Mind you, this guy is 27 years old, only 5 years older than our oldest son, and he was that asterisk hurled at a 45-year-old married mother of 2. What a fantastic high-quality guy she chose to destroy our marriage and the home we had built for ourselves. Isn't he a beautiful boy with a compassionate side? She responded by saying essentially the same thing she had when they last spoke. She loved him and enjoyed their time together, but she couldn't lose me. She stated that I was still the love of her life, but there would always be a place in her heart for him, and they could be friends if he so wished. But their physical relationship had ended. He persuaded her to meet him one last time that week, and she consented. One more for the road, right? Who am I to say anything? That's just what I did to her the night before. Of course, I saved all of this in the archive I had built. On December 4th, the third and final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost started. The divorce paperwork was completed, My new place of residence was established, and now I needed to gradually begin moving my possessions out of the house. But first, I needed to tell my boys. That Friday night, I invited my oldest to join me at my office. I laid everything out on the table, except for the specifics. Their mother had been cheating on me for about a year, and I was preparing to file for divorce. My 17-year-old was particularly touched by this since he had recently experienced his first taste of infidelity. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months previously. The notion of his own mother being capable of doing such a thing tore his heart apart for the second time. My oldest handled it much better and suggested that he take his brother in to live with him until everything was settled, which I agreed to. We packed some of his possessions and he inquired, "Are you going to be okay?" I replied, "Yes, youngster, I am going to be okay, as are you. We will be all right, I promise." Then they were gone. The most difficult part was now accomplished and it was time to arm the nuclear weapons. Over the next 2 weeks, Oz would help me remove some of my most sensitive belongings out of the house on a regular basis. I gave him a list of everything he needed to get while Sue and I were at work and left him with a spare key. Sue would not have realized anything was missing until someone told her. I also obtained a new phone and phone number, which I shared with everyone who needed to know: Oz, Joey, my boys, my big sister, and my mother. Meanwhile, I continued the deception with Sue and she had no idea. I gave her bits and pieces of affection to keep her off the trail while she was still in contact with P. Not as much as before, but there was still an emotional connection. The fog was faint, but still there. All the while, I was gathering, and I mean everything. Every bit of data I'd saved since the beginning of the plan: call logs, texts, images, emails, everything, and printing it. I must have spent over $1,500 on Staples supplies like printer ink, paper and binders. I organized everything chronologically from the beginning of the affair to the end 2 weeks ago in December. 14 binders. I then placed each one in a box, gift-wrapped it, and addressed it to a variety of people, including my mother. My father died 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I mention P works for the same company, and there is an express rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does. Several of her friends, P and her parents. I took all of those parcels to the post office and got them shipped out on December 16th. Delivery is scheduled between December 22nd and December 24th. Perfect. So we are now on Christmas Eve. Sue returns home at the usual time, unsure if she has seen P. On the 18th, I stopped tracking her on the app, believing I'd gotten enough use out of it. As usual, she showers, spends time with me, and then I blow her out on the living room couch. Then she retires for the night. The final stage had arrived. The nuclear weapon I had been constructing since June was about to be fired. I arose in the middle of the night and wrapped one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers glued to the inner cover, then placed it on my side of the bed with a Merry Christmas greeting. Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed up the rest of my most important items, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and left the house I'd lived in for 23 years for the final time. That was a week ago, buddies. Sue believes that I have vanished, been shadowed, or ghosted. She is blocked on Facebook, but she hasn't blocked me, so I'm keeping track of the effects. It's simply great. My packages have arrived at their destinations, and Sue has been crucified. Her younger sister dressed her completely down. Both of her parents have condemned her. My mother totally destroyed her, like holy crap. I know my mother is harsh, but what she called Sue was ridiculous. Sue has been feverishly trying to find out whether anyone knows where I am, but those who do are not saying anything. She's desperately attempting to contact me all over her Facebook feed, possibly because she knows I'm looking. But I won't say anything to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the next time I share oxygen with her. She can't use the narrative to make me appear bad because I've exposed her to everyone she cares about. According to a mutual acquaintance who works for the same company, she and P will be placed on administrative leave starting tomorrow. So, excellent news, she will most certainly be unemployed by 2021. Regarding the final 2 binders, one has been delivered to my lawyer as the final piece of evidence for my impending divorce. The last one I stored in my storage unit, to be burnt in Joey's fire pit after the divorce is finalized. Do I feel sad about it? Not in the least. For 23 years, I treated her well. I gave her the home she wanted, the family she sought, the life I thought we both deserved, and unconditional love. Never did I falter. Never did I stray. Never did I consider breaking my vows. When an issue developed that I suspected was interfering with our marriage, I addressed her and explained the situation, and we worked together to remedy it as best we could. She chose to seek solace in another man's bed rather than come to me and communicate her discontent with her current intimate situation. She decided to go out with a young punk who gave her tingles. So no, I'm not sorry for whatever I did to or for her. I do not care if she ends up in hell. The most I could lose is my home, a car, and possibly a few $100s each month in alimony. However, because the divorce is filed under the adultery statute in New York State, which is an at-fault state, this may be waived based on the overwhelming evidence I've shown. She's dead to me, and I'll never look back. Quick edit. Under certain circumstances, NYS is not fully to blame. Yet a divorce can be filed at fault, as my lawyer has advised me. I'll meet with the soon-to-be ex-wife and her lawyer tomorrow. I suppose I will just post an update here. Update. I deceived my unfaithful soon-to-be ex-wife into thinking I was cheating, then disappeared and served her on Christmas Day. Christmas Day was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. It's still a work in progress because I want to buy more stuff, but I consider it my home because I'll be here for at least 2 years. My boys and the eldest girlfriend came over and spent most of the day with me. The girlfriend brought over homemade snacks and made a great lunch. I got to sit down and talk to my sons in a way I hadn't in a long time, which was nice. My big sister also stopped over with additional snacks and hung out with us. It was the first time she had seen her nephews in nearly a year. Having all of them there was extremely beneficial to me because I feel I would have drunk myself to death if I had been alone. Everyone left about 8 p.m., and I decided to go hang out with Joey and his wife Claudia. I hung out with them for a few hours, had a few beers, and then headed home. The next important advancement happened last week, on December 29, 2020. Nina texted me about midday, asking whether I was busy that night. I of course was not, so we agreed to meet after I ended work. She showed up and we went to a diner near where I worked. We're doing indoor eating at 25% capacity in NYC thanks to the Rona, but there's rarely a wait because many of us don't eat out very much these days. Regardless, once we were seated and had ordered our dinner, Nina essentially laid all of her cards on the table. And I knew what was coming. She basically admitted that she had liked me since we were teenagers but never had the opportunity to tell me because Sue swooped in and took me before she could. For context, I've known Nina for 2 years longer than Sue. As previously said, she is the fourth point on my social square, with myself, Oz and Joey. We were the social misfits in high school, raver youngsters who didn't fit into any of the other cliques. Nina struggled with her weight and developed diabetes. She was the heavy-set goth lady who was really cool, but no man ever looked twice at her. However, we have always had chemistry. Nina now works as a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She was the ugly duckling that grew into a stunning swan, if I may say so. Long story short, we decided to start dating after my divorce was finalized, and yes, I slept with her that night. We went back to my new house and had a terrific time. Am I ashamed of having slept with her? Hell no. Nina has been a more valuable friend to me than Sue ever was. That's not to say Sue wasn't my best friend, but Nina has always been there for me over the nearly 25 years I've known her, even standing back from her own feelings to allow me to pursue and eventually create a relationship with Sue. That moved me on a level I did not expect. That amount of selflessness for another person is the essence of true love. I know it sounds like I'm just convincing myself that sleeping with her was the right decision, but it was. And I aim to devote my complete attention to discovering what lies ahead for Nina and me. On to yesterday. Yesterday, I met with my wife and her lawyer to talk about our divorce. It's been 2 weeks since I ghosted my soon-to-be ex-wife. This past Monday, I received a phone call alerting me that Sue's attorney had set a conference with us to discuss the terms of divorce for January 6, 2021, which was yesterday. I met with my lawyer on Tuesday morning to discuss the terms I wanted. Sue filed for an uncontested divorce due to spousal neglect. My terms include a comprehensive distribution of assets, and I will sell her half of the house ownership. She may keep it. We keep our cars in good working order. I keep my Poconos cabin, and under the pretense of marital neglect, she receives no spousal support from me. My 17-year-old son, whom I will refer to as 17 inches from now on, is free to choose who he wants to live with following the divorce, which will most likely be me. So on Wednesday, I arrived at my lawyer's office dressed as Johnny Cash. My wife and her attorney were there, and she looked like a wreck, barely holding it together. I gave her a stern look. I won't burden you with legal language, but her lawyer proposed terms of reconciliation. I dismissed them almost as soon as she finished explaining the contents of the request. Long story short, we agreed on a formal separation that would result in an uncontested divorce. The only modification is that I will pay her $653 per month in temporary spousal support to cover the cost of utilities until she finds work again. Yes, she was fired for messing about with P. He was also let go. I agreed to pay for up to a year after the finalization. I make enough money that it won't hurt me financially if she takes her time looking for a new job, and she has enough savings to last a long time. She is alone after a full calendar year since the divorce was finalized. A little price to pay for getting rid of her crooked ass. Things will take around 3 months to finish, so provided nothing goes wrong, I should be rid of her by early April. After the meeting, my lawyer said his goodbyes and promised to call me to keep me informed on the status of the filing. Sue followed me down the street pleading, "Can we talk?" I figured I'd provide her with at least that. She remained calm during the discussion but burst into tears outside, apologizing and explaining that she never intended for it to get as far as it did. She explained that she never anticipated falling in love with P, but when she felt I was cheating, she realized how terrible it was to betray her own marriage in this manner. She begged me if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her, and if we could try again in a few years. She can't imagine her life without me. I advised her to start envisioning it right away because it would be the last time I spoke or saw her. I informed her that 17 inches is virtually a man and capable of making his own decisions about his future. I claim I gave her half of my life and all of my unconditional love, but she, in her own words, fell in love with another man. I will never forgive her. My feelings for her were progressively drained during the months she confided in and confessed her love to P, rather than approaching me and telling me she was dissatisfied with how things were going between us. I told her that I used to love who she was, but now I loathe who she is, and that if I never see her again, it will be too soon. Here we are, on the sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan, with her causing a commotion and weeping her eyes out. A few individuals strolled by, throwing sideways glances, but I didn't mind. I didn't want to disgrace her in public. I'd already wrecked her socially and professionally, but I needed to demonstrate my last ounce of affection for her. I concluded by telling her that I had no regrets about being her husband for the previous 23 years. I despised the fact that, after 23 years, she believed that the simplest solution was the best one. And, here's the kicker, I owe this one to the nice kids of __ on Reddit, because it came to me only seconds before I said it. For 23 years, I thought you were mine, but it turns out it was just my turn. Then I inserted my Raycons, turned around and walked away. Later that night, her father contacted me to apologize. He compliments me on always being a nice father to his daughter, admits he is ashamed of her, and claims he raised her better than she did. I won't lie, I'll miss the old man. My father died years ago. Therefore he has always been my default father figure. But after that call, I doubt I'll be able to communicate with anyone in her family. That night, I went on Facebook and symbolically changed my relationship status to divorced. Yay! It's not finished yet, but in my opinion, it is. As previously said, when I post on Facebook it is deemed an event, thus several people contacted me via Messenger with questions. I explained everything, including the fact that I filed for divorce from Sue earlier that day. Of course, Nina called, surprised that I had pulled the trigger so swiftly. Obviously when we spoke, I was already in the process, but she had no idea how far along it was. When I asked her if she could come over, she bolted. We knocked boots again, but this time she stayed the night. We slept in my bed and spoke till early in the morning, and I haven't felt this relieved and connected in a long time. Nina understands me, and I can't get enough of being with her. She's been the only thing on my mind since she confided in me. Yeah, I know some people may think I'm __ up for moving on so quickly, but as far as I'm concerned, my marriage ended the day P let Sue touch his pecker, so I'm ready to go on. So wonderful, that is it, that's the end. My divorce is in the works, and I am starting a relationship with Nina. I know I mentioned in a statement to someone that I'd probably never marry again, but that was before Nina told me about her emotions for me, and I can't deny that I feel the same way now. We're planning to take things slowly and won't make any announcements until Sue's divorce is legal and formal. I don't care what happens to Sue. She could move P into our old house for all I care. I'll receive my house payment in 4 quarterly installments throughout 2021, and aside from the $653 I'll deposit directly into her savings account each month, I'll never see or communicate with her again. I am eternally grateful to everyone who has expressed encouragement, support and gratitude. The soon-to-be ex-wife of 23 years attempted suicide last night. The hits keep coming. I've been sitting here for hours and wasn't sure where to put it, but this sub seemed appropriate. So if you're looking for some backstory, check out my post history. I'm not sure how the connection to other subscribers works here, but my previous 2 entries are shown in my profile. Here's a quick version. I found out that my wife of 23 years, 45F, was having an affair with a 27-year-old coworker. We have 2 sons, aged 22 and 17. I created a plan to severely disrupt her life, with the goal of convincing her that I was having an affair of my own. I continued the ruse for more than 4.5 months while gathering evidence of her infidelity, obtaining divorce papers and planning my exit strategy. Slowly moving my personal belongings from our house to a new apartment, getting a new phone and number, separating my half of our shared income from our joint account, and so on. On December 16, 2020, I gathered all of the evidence of her affair that I had compiled, printed it from beginning to end, filed it in 14 binders, packed 11 in gift-wrapped boxes, and mailed it all to the most important people in her life, as well as her HR department, with an ETA of December 22, 2020. On Christmas Eve, while she slept, I took one of the remaining 3 binders and repeated the process, but this time I glued the divorce notice to the inside cover and placed it on my side of the bed. Mind you, she had her affair there several times, along with my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I shadow ghosted her. Her life fell apart during the next 4 days. Her family had effectively excommunicated her. Her friends, who were uninformed of the affair, shunned her, and my mother reprimanded her, calling her the most vile and derogatory insults you could imagine. Her lover and she were both put on administrative leave and eventually fired. We had our divorce hearing last week and agreed on a formal separation that will result in an uncontested divorce, subject to a few requirements for transitional income because she is still unemployed. I'll pay for the utilities, $653 per month, until she finds a job or until 1 year after the divorce is finalized, which is expected in 3 months. She keeps her home, car, and half of the marital assets. I keep half of the assets, which include my car, motorcycle, boat and vacation house, a cabin in the Poconos. Following the hearing, we had one final conversation in which she attempted to excuse her infidelity and pushed me to give her another chance once the divorce was finalized. Of course, I said no, told her some harsh words, and walked away forever. This brings us to last night. Only my closest friends, 2 boys, elder sister and mother have my new contact information, and I have completely blocked my soon-to-be ex-wife from all social media platforms. She has no way to reach me since I left her on Christmas Eve, but several of our mutual acquaintances do. Last night, I was sitting at my apartment when I received a voice call notification on Messenger from one of those friends. She was one of the only people who didn't forsake Sue after the affair was uncovered. She did not waste time responding to my message. She informed me that she had gone to check on Sue, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and discovered her passed out in the bedroom, foaming at the mouth with 2 empty pill bottles beside her. Sue was in the intensive care unit, in critical but stable condition, and the doctor anticipated she'd recover. Sue had pleaded with me to come, and her parents and 2 sisters were also hospitalized. My guess is that they were notified after the hospital attempted to tell me, but Sue was still using my old phone number as her emergency contact. I merely told her friend, no. Sue is no longer my problem. And that she had clearly decided to take the easy way out rather than face the sorrow and misery of ending her 23-year marriage. I then told her friend that if Sue's family was present, they could help her pick up the pieces, but as far as I'm concerned, there is no Sue and I anymore. I ended the call. I slept on it for a few hours, and my sons called me this morning to find out what occurred. I answered yes, and I told them both that if they wanted to be there to support their mother, I wouldn't judge them for it. She is their mother after all. But I made it clear that I no longer cared what she did with or to herself. They were both taken aback by this, but they acknowledged my position. However, now that the news of her suicide attempt has spread, many of those who abandoned her are coming forward and telling me that I need to be there for her. That regardless of what she did to me, I should assist her in her time of need. I also discovered that her affair partner tried to pay her a visit this morning but was denied permission because he is not a family member. I am being pressed to go see her, but I no longer care about her. I haven't for a long time. I emotionally checked out during the process of collecting my revenge for her betrayal, and I still don't care what happened. Actually, it makes me dislike her even more. She is the one who was unfaithful. She is the one who, after a nearly year-long affair with a man barely 5 years older than our oldest child, decided it was worth jeopardizing 23 years of marriage. And now that she has to face the consequences of her actions, she adopts the most selfish approach. Even though she is expected to survive, she has managed to evoke quick sympathy from people who condemned her weeks ago. Meanwhile, I'm portrayed as the angry ex-husband who refuses to sympathize with her, at least by the bulk of her family. Her father, on the other hand, called me and supported my decision to stay away. I feel as if I never truly knew this woman. After 23 years, it has finally happened. Yes, I get that the way I ended things with her may have left her in a horrible emotional condition, but a whole new bag of worms has opened. Either she had a catastrophic mental breakdown and tried suicide, or she engaged in an extremely risky and deliberate ploy to regain favor with individuals who had only weeks before scolded her for abandoning me. She cheated on me and is now the victim? Sorry if this comes out as a rant, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I want to be clear. I'm not going to visit Sue. She waived her right to my concern for her well-being the day she permitted P, my personal nickname for her partner, to touch her. This may come across as cruel, but despite my cool, calm and collected exterior throughout the event, my emotions remain raw. But I do not care about this woman. I haven't in a very long time. I am aware that I will be despised by a number of people here, but I do not mind. Think of me any way you choose. If you were in my position, you would interpret her actions very differently. Some of you will search through my post history to see what I did to her. You're going to infer that her suicide attempt was my fault. That tricking her into thinking I was cheating on her when she was actually cheating on me, and then destroying her socially and professionally, was the catalyst for her breakdown. Maybe it was. Maybe I am a callous sociopath. However, as Arthur Fleck famously said, you get what you quite deserve. I devoted half of my life to this woman, doing all in my ability to be the finest husband possible. She admitted that I had no influence over her decision to leave our marriage. She did it for herself. Her selfishness knows no bounds, and I'm relieved to be free of her. If that makes me a bad person because I refuse to visit her and never intend to engage with her again, so be it. I stick to my beliefs. She decided to deceive me. She decided to prioritize her needs over our marriage. So now it's my turn to prioritize myself above all else. I don't mind if she perishes in the depths of hell. Allow people to help her self-improvement. My dedication to her well-being ended when we signed the separation agreement. I simply needed to get this off my chest. If you're going to judge me for how I feel, save it. As I have indicated, despite 23 years and 2 children, I never fully knew this woman. I have no sympathy for her, and never will. Sue's father informed me that she had been transferred from the ICU to the mental health ward. The doctors are still keeping track of her mental health. She is alert and intelligent again, but definitely sleepy. Her father told me she asked if I might come to see her, but he declined. She turned off after that. He gently remarked that he would only provide additional information if I questioned, as he was aware of my mental state. I've also scheduled counseling for my son, who is 17 years old. His first consultation is this coming Monday. Update. The aftermath of my soon-to-be ex-wife's suicide attempt. I'm writing this as a form of therapy, a practical way to convey my ideas. Despite everything I had said in previous blogs and comments, I went to see Sue. She's been out of the hospital for 4 days, and believe it or not, Nina convinced me to see her. Nina explained that the only way I'd be able to let go of my dislike for Sue was to see her one more time in her fragile state. So about 6 p.m., I called Sue for the first time since serving her. Her greeting was not the happy and effervescent one I had grown accustomed to during the previous 2 decades. Her voice seemed harsh and faint. When she heard my voice, she burst into tears. It took her nearly 3 minutes to gather her composure and speak again. Before she could say anything, I told her I'd be there by 8 p.m., and she agreed. My prior home is around an hour to an hour and a half away from Co-op City, where I currently live. I grabbed a bite to eat at the neighborhood pizza and left. I arrived at 7:47 p.m., and she was already at the door when I drove into the driveway. As I neared, I realized the toll her actions had taken on her. She appeared noticeably thinner, the unhealthy kind of emaciated. Overall, she resembled the walking dead. The first thing she tried to do was come in for a hug, but I stopped her. She understood I wasn't there to console her and quickly backed off. We went inside and sat in the living room. Sue almost immediately told me that she wanted to be transparent about everything. She told me she couldn't live with her guilt over what she'd done to me and the boys. She entered a downward spiral of shame and misery after we signed the separation agreement, culminating in her suicide attempt. Her friend, who contacted me from the hospital, saw her behavior and started coming over to check on her. She stated that the doctors told her that if she hadn't been discovered 1 hour earlier, she would have survived. She stated that she had failed me as a wife. That falling for P was a mistake and that she had not backed out when she knew she was in too deep. She also apologized for sharing so much personal information about our marriage and speaking ill of me to him. She confessed she never imagined herself capable of doing such a thing. But she was. She thought she was doing the right thing, but when she discovered I was cheating, it hit her like a ton of bricks. The sensation of betrayal was intense, and she needed to leave as quickly as possible. However, it was definitely too late. She then asked when I had stopped caring. I told her the night she confronted me with such vehemence about my cheating, despite the fact that she had been sleeping with P for months. I lost all respect for her that night, which fueled my drive to follow out my plan. She told me that when she got up on Christmas morning and saw the gift I had left, she was overjoyed, until she opened it. When she realized what it was and how much I knew, she went wild and hasn't entered our bedroom since. She desperately tried to find out if anyone knew where I was, but when she went to Facebook to ask, she was scolded by friends and family for her actions. She wasn't sure how everyone knew so quickly. That's when I informed her about the remaining binders. Her shocked look was priceless. It dawned on her that I had orchestrated everything she had gone through. Her friends turning on her, her family humiliating her, and yes, even her job loss. It was all my fault. She simply fell silent and turned off after that. When I went to use the bathroom, everything was in disarray. The mirror was broken, her skincare supplies were all over the place, and the tub appeared to have not been cleaned since they took her to the hospital. When I returned to the living room, she put her face in her hands, crying. And truthfully, I felt nothing. There is no more anger, rage or sympathy. They say that apathy is the polar opposite of love, and as I looked at her, I felt exactly that. She looked up at me and murmured, "I messed up everything. I harmed us, and I don't know what to do. I can't do it by myself." I told her she had her family, the person who discovered her, and our sons, but not me. She would never do this again. I told her I came to give her closure after the pain she had put herself through, but as I walked out that door, I never looked back. P showed up shortly after. She informed me that he contacted her 2 days earlier. They spoke for a few hours, and she advised him to move on with his life, meet a younger woman and forget about her. Sue spent the remainder of the conversation apologizing for betraying me and asking, "Is this really the end?" Without hesitation, I looked her in the eyes and said, "Yes." It had ended long before I served the divorce papers on Christmas. I assumed it was my indication to leave. There were no further words exchanged since what else could be said. I left her on the couch, closed the door behind me, got in my car and drove home. It's 2:56 a.m. when I write this. I needed to convey it while it was still fresh in my mind. This concludes the Sue saga. My 17-year-old son and I have both been booked for counseling in the coming weeks. Nina and I are still going strong, sticking to our policy of keeping things quiet until my divorce is official. I'm remaining active and motivated, looking forward to a future with a woman I know will cherish and honor me, as she has for decades. It's time for me to focus on the life ahead of me. So, this is probably my last post for a while. Perhaps I'll publish an update after the divorce is official. Thank you to everyone who has supported me and wished me success. To everyone who cheered my retribution plan, I honestly wish it hadn't happened, but if I had to do it again, I wouldn't change anything, except maybe doing more to P than just firing him. And to the one person who attacked me, claiming I deserved it since I raped my wife, you are insane and, yeah, it's time to get my green ass out of here. Update. Where are things and where are they going? It's been just over 2 months since I served my wife's divorce papers, and a month since my previous update, which I said would most likely be my last. But a lot has transpired since that post, and after returning to this account and seeing hundreds of messages and responses, I decided to share what's going on. Before I continue, I'd like to convey my heartfelt appreciation for all of your compassion and support throughout my journey. I am grateful for all of the affection I've received on Reddit and from my family. First, I'd like to address a matter about which many people have expressed concern. My youngest son, who is 17 years old. He began individual counseling only a few days after my last post. I accompanied him to his first 2 sessions, and he has been going on his own ever since. He attends twice a week and it's really helped him. He is doing okay overall, but his trust in relationships has been completely shattered. The long-term consequences of his own adultery, combined with dealing with his mother's cheating and attempted suicide, have left a deep mark that I feel will take decades to heal. I also realized that his experience was worse than he had previously claimed. He discovered his ex-girlfriend making out with someone he thought was a friend, but who had only approached him to get to her. He never told me about this aspect of his breakup. My heart aches for my son, who has had to go through this at such a crucial point in his growth. You do everything you can to protect your children, but life ultimately says, no. He's decided to stay with IC for the long term, and I've told him that if he ever needs to talk to me about anything, nothing is off limits. Next up is my own IC. If you've read most of my articles, you'll see that I have an anger issue, which is odd given that I've always been a reserved and controlled man. But this entire event has certainly awakened a sleeping dragon in me, and it is a true fire breather. I have talked about everything with my therapist, and I mean everything. When I told him what I did to my ex, he was both amazed and appalled, not what I had expected. Apparently, when prodded, I exhibit psychopathic tendencies, which is not surprising given what I have done. My sessions are more structured than dramatic, as I process all that is going on in my mind concerning my marriage's dissolution and attempt to achieve balance. Now, for the elephant in the room, Nina. I'm not sure where I would be without this woman. I never anticipated having such a loving, understanding and nurturing woman by my side to support me through this. We are still going strong, and despite our best efforts to keep our relationship quiet, it is very open within our circle. She just understands me, and has since we were teenagers. Because she understands the misery of having the person you've spent your entire life with cheat on you, she does everything she can to help me cope with my emotions. We alternated between staying in her place and mine. Her 5-year-old opposed the concept of living together. My flat is too small for 3 people and my lease is until 2022. So, for the time being, we'll continue to split time. Nina comes to my house when her kid is with her father and I come to hers when she has her daughter. Speaking of her daughter, I admire her and she has taken a liking to me. I wish I could find the words to describe how important Nina has been to me throughout everything. If you haven't read my previous entries, Nina has secretly loved me since we were sophomores in high school, but she was an ugly duckling who believed she had no chance with me. She deliberately sat by and watched me pursue, date and marry my soon-to-be ex-wife Sue, knowing how she felt. She kept this a secret for nearly 25 years, until a week after my divorce hearing, when we met for dinner and she revealed everything. I feel privileged to have her in my life. We are constantly discussing what the future holds for us. We are not getting married since we have both been burned by marriage, but we have discussed having a civil partnership. We'll probably wait a while before heading down that path, but it's evident that we're destined to be together. Finally, there is Sue, the soon-to-be ex-wife. There isn't much to tell. I haven't spoken to her since her attempted suicide. I have no idea what she is doing and don't want to know. I consider her dead. That is pretty much all. Life goes on. It's March 2nd as I type this, so only 1 month till the divorce is final. By this time next month, I'll be a free man, and I'm counting down the days until I can begin the next chapter in my life. To clarify, I made a mistake when I mentioned being clinically diagnosed as a psychopath. My therapist indicated I have sociopathic tendencies when provoked, so I assumed it was a professional diagnosis. It wasn't, it was just his professional observation. Furthermore, my 22-year-old son had no intention of causing harm to P. He expressed what he did out of wrath. Update, the end and farewell. Sue became my ex-wife on April 13th, exactly 1 month ago. My lawyer first told me that it would go through on the 18th, but because of the reduction of COVID cases here in NYC, it was pushed through a few days earlier. My lawyer, Jeff, called me on April 12th and asked me to come see him the next day. When I did, he handed me the finalization notification and shook my hand. I couldn't leave it at that, so I went in, hugged him, and thanked him for everything he had done for me. On the way home, all I could think about was watching mental movies of everything from the preceding 24 years of my life. All the memories. All the history. When I walked into my flat, it happened. When I hit the floor, all of the emotions that had been bottled up inside me came out. I hadn't sobbed like that in years, and it wasn't a sad cry by any means. My spirit felt as if it had been set free from the lowest, darkest depths. My first call that night was at 22. I kept it brief and nice, implying that it was official and that his mother and I were no longer married as of that day. He asked how I was feeling. I'm sure he could hear my voice that I had been crying, and I answered I was okay. Then 17 got on the phone and we talked for almost 90 minutes. 22 and his fiancée have done a fantastic job of caring for him, and he, like me, continues to receive treatment. I won't go into detail about what we discussed, but I will say that there is still a lot of work to be done, especially with his perspective on relationships. Nina came to see me later that night as she often did, and I certainly told her the news. She simply wrapped her arms around my waist and embraced me tightly, and I cried again. Nina reassured me, "No matter what, I will never betray you, and I love you with all my heart." I know it is all true. I may face some criticism for saying this, but I do not regret the life I built with Sue. Despite everything, she gave me 2 strong sons. But it is clear today that I chose the wrong woman. Nina has given so much in the previous 4.5 months while asking for almost little in return. She only requests that I be there for her. I don't want to go on about her, but she's my actual hero. There have also been a few unexpected events since the divorce was finalized. For example, P approached me immediately. Yes, he messaged me on Reddit. It turns out he saw the story when it went viral on YouTube and immediately recognized it as about him. Before anyone asks, I will not reveal his Reddit username. I think I've made the kids suffer enough. The first thing he did was apologize for his involvement in all of this. He informed me what the results of the binder I sent to his mother were. Essentially, he has been excommunicated by his family. His mother, as I discovered while plotting my retribution, is a devout Catholic woman, the in church 3 days a week, no mea patria spiritus sancti, type of devout. So her views on marriage are sacrosanct, and learning that her son had recently ended a nearly 25-year marriage sent her into a frenzy. She fired him the same day, and he was fired within a week of his employer receiving the binder I provided. He has been couch surfing and seeking a new job ever since. He claimed he wanted to contact me on social media, all the places he blocked me while screwing Sue, but admits he was afraid because, in his words, if I was able to find him before, I could find him again. I admit that I could have totally devastated this youngster, but I chose not to. I asked when he last saw Sue and he said he hadn't in months. Sue told him to forget about her and go on with his life the last time he spoke with her, much like she told me the last time I spoke with her. So she was not lying about it. I asked the boy some additional questions, and he was surprisingly forthcoming. I assume he was seeking some type of restitution for the havoc he had created himself. Much of what he said was consistent with what I had learned from the text material I got. I didn't say anything. I just asked, and he responded. The talk went on for around 20 minutes until he apologized again. That's when I hit him with this. Copy and paste the following from the conversation. You're a 27-year-old man who must spend the rest of his life knowing that your own mother despises you for ending a marriage that lasted nearly as long as you've been alive. I understand you messaged me because karma is bugging you, but I will not bring you closure. When I was 27, I was building a legacy. You are currently a homeless, unemployed homewrecker. If you are intelligent, you will gain from this lecture. If you are not, you will be a disaster until you reach my age, assuming you live that long. I wish you luck, but you don't need it. You should get your act together. I completed our talk and blocked him. Clearly, this was not the kind of closure he was looking for. And I could have been much more harsh, but I believe those statements are enough to haunt him. The next significant event is Nina's transition into Mrs. Frog on May 4, 2021. Over the last 2 months, we've had extensive discussions about where we want to go. Nina made it abundantly clear that she has no intention of ever being with anyone other than me, and she desires my namesake. She wants to be my wife and has asked me to adopt Anna, her daughter. I've said it before, I adore this kid. She's 6 years old now, her birthday was last month, and she idolizes me. I am the first father figure she has known since her biological father abandoned her when she was 4. Nina has made it a point not to introduce Anna to any man she has been involved with unless they have made a long-term commitment. Needless to say, I have perseverance and experience raising children. Anna and 17 complement each other perfectly. The big brother-little sister dynamic between them is both lovely and sweet. 17 has formed a deep bond to Anna and appreciates it. I told my therapist about it, and he said that's a positive sign. 17 sees the innocence he wishes to preserve in Anna, despite the fact that his own innocence has been shattered. So last Monday, we decided to go to City Hall and pull the trigger. It took 24 hours to receive the marriage license, and the outcome was the most unremarkable ever envisioned. I addressed it as if no one had seen it coming, and Big Sis said, "Now placing bets on when the now expecting post goes up." We thought we were keeping our relationship a secret for months, but practically everyone figured it out. So great. That was hilarious. Some might believe it was too soon, and I've mentioned in earlier remarks that I will never marry again. However, this occurred before Nina and I developed a meaningful relationship. This woman has declared her undying and unconditional love for me. She has cried in my arms, telling me how happy she is and how she never thought she'd be able to be with me. She's gone into great detail about her feelings for me throughout the last 25 years, and how even while married, she mourned the idea that Sue won. I had no idea how deep that rabbit hole was. She even said that she had pondered having an affair with me, but she was never that type of person. Even still, throughout all the years I've known her, she's given me so much while expecting so little in return. Even the woman I married and had 2 children with has never shown me as much affection as Nina does. I'd be silly not to tell her my name. So now she has it, and we are beginning the paperwork for me to adopt Anna. Finally, there's Sue. I haven't spoken with her since my last visit to our marital home 4 months ago, although mutual friends, the ones who remain, send me updates on a daily basis. I learnt from one of those acquaintances, a realtor, that she sold the house and was recruited as a clerical assistant at his company. In doing so, he canceled the assistance payments I was required to make due to her unemployment. She currently lives in a little apartment near his office, which he also helped build. She is still functional, but she is a shadow of the woman she once was. She has acquired little weight and keeps to herself. She comes in, does her work, and rarely interacts with anyone other than him. Most likely since her work-related socializing is where it all started. The last time I heard from her was at the end of March, when I thanked him for watching out for her but advised him that I didn't need any further information. She's no longer my problem. I'm almost certain she knows about Nina and myself, as numerous of our surviving common friends have mentioned us. With 17 just a year away from becoming a legal adult, I have no need to speak with her again, and I won't. And that's it. My journey through betrayal, vengeance, attempted suicide, and mental pain is complete. I'll answer questions and leave a few remarks, but after that, I'm returning to the swamp to live with my new frog bride and her tiny tadpole. Thank you to the thousands of people who have offered me advice, best wishes and compliments during this process. The opportunity to tell my story and help others dealing with the pain of infidelity has humbled and blessed me. I enjoy the new friends I've met on Reddit. I never imagined meeting such attractive people in a place where blatantly negative things might be spoken. Keep it green and pleasant. Reddit. Neighbor's shed encroaches on our property, stalling house plans for over a year. How can I finally get it removed after battling him for so long? Original post July 3, 2024. My dad owns a vacant but desirable property in NY, neither of us currently reside there. He is passing the property along to me so I can build a house to live there. The property has been in my family since 1937. It took about $10K for him to get the title cleaned up with a lawyer. Last spring I had a survey done that showed the neighbor's shed encroaches on the property by about 7. Setback is 12, so needs to move around 19 back. The neighbor even said to my surveyor that my dad should just sell him the land. With this encroachment my dad is unable to pass along a clean title to me, and without a clean title I'm not able to secure a home building loan. I was going to work with the neighbor to amicably remove the shed but he swiftly blocked my number and didn't answer his door when I was in town last August. I looked into the town codes and the penalty for the violation is $100 a week. He also does not have a permit for this shed, which is necessary per the town's code of any structure over 120 square feet requiring a permit. Since I didn't live there I got the city involved. The building inspector told him to remove the shed from our property. Neighbor ignored and refused for about 5 months. Then the building inspector had the city attorney write him a letter in January giving him 60 days to respond. The inspector has not given us a copy of the letter. We've requested it multiple times now so I'm unsure of what all was said in the letter. I've also requested that the inspector enforce the penalties as well as an injunction to padlock his shed for further use. Those requests were ignored as well. We didn't hear back for about 90 days from the neighbor after the attorney's letter, but he agreed to move the shed. Woohoo, right? He then said we need to get surveyors to pin where he should move his shed so he doesn't have to do it twice. We have 3 different surveys of the property, and there are pins at each corner. I called our surveyor and it would be $700 to mark where he should move the shed. I felt that I shouldn't be responsible for getting his shed into compliance. This is his violation and I've been patiently waiting and delaying an entire year. I don't care if he isn't within the full means of the 12 setback, he just needs it off my property to appease me at this point. Initially I was willing to get the surveyor out again and pay for it, but my concern is that if we do that he's still not going to move it in a timely manner and keep moving the goalposts for us. Neighbor even said it would take 5 months after we pin the property. I don't know why he thinks it will take 5 months to move the shed. I called around and got a quote from shed movers. One said they could do it next week for $575. I've got a lawyer in my back pocket who will be my last-ditch effort. It's expensive. A letter alone will be $1,500, and will take a long time, so I don't love that idea. He said we could do a revocable license for the bit of land, but I'm not giving the neighbor anything at this point. I want to put a driveway and definitely a fence there now too, so I'll need that land. At this point I understand why my neighbor is being a jerk, he wants to get away with whatever he can. But I can't understand why the building inspector is letting him get away with everything. Why no penalties? Why no injunctions? He was very unhappy when I called the town clerk and asked for more information because the inspector doesn't answer mine. He's been so ineffective on this and it's having real repercussions for us. We're renting in an HCOL area that we don't like and would love to have made progress this year to move ASAP. The neighbor should have racked up at least $4,400 in penalties so far, and an additional $2K for the 5 months he wants to tack on. I feel like that would invoke actual pressure for him to move it, right? So what is my next step here to get this done ASAP? Is there someone above the inspector with the city that can help me with this? How can I get the town to actually enforce the movement of this shed and its penalties without being such wet noodles about it? Any ideas? Relevant comments. Turk Gonzo, 75. This is brutal. Once this is all settled and your house is done, you're going to have to live next door to that asshole. OOP, IKR. We're budgeting for a very big fence and floodlights. SLP 1965. Does this neighbor have connections with the government? Is it a good old boy kind of place? Seems so fishy. OOP. You're not the first one to ask this exact same question with the same phrasing. I don't believe so. I think the inspector is just ineffective, but who knows? Commenter, it's on your family's property. I'd burn it down. OOP, ha yeah, trust me. We've thought about that a million times. Editor's note. OOP rehashes the OG post, editing that part out. So yeah, everyone wants me to burn this shed down, bulldoze it, see it on the property line, or just move it myself. This is in a small town in NY. I don't want to cause waves with neighbors and I need the building inspector to not hate me when I build my house. I'm not going to destroy his property, but I'm interested in moving it myself. Is it legal for me to do that since he's been given so many notices and the town has ordered it to be moved? If I give him a notice, is that enough, or do we need to have an attorney write a letter? My concern is that our neighbor seems like he's got money to mess with us and I don't want any repercussions falling on my dad. I'm afraid he'd sue for some kind of damages or trespassing or something. IDK, he's a jerk. Could we be held liable for this even if we give warning? What are my actual options here and how to go about this with the lowest risk of repercussions? Update September 11th, 2024. So a few weeks back I went to Home Depot and we bought a Sawzall. We went to the neighbor's property in the middle of the night and, nah, not really. For all you burn it downers and Sawzall it sayers, my attorney said by no means do anything like that. He said do not touch it, in any way, ever. So thank you to everyone for the solid and rational advice of talking to attorneys and, as frustrating as it is, utilizing our government resources as recounted below. So I escalated this with the town and bothered them to no end. I got all the way up to the town supervisor and he was very frustrated on my behalf. I told him I've been dealing with this situation for a year, that the neighbor has been told to move the shed by the inspector and town attorney, that I've already had 3 surveys of the land to prove the encroachment, and that the property is properly demarcated with pins. He asked why the building inspector was having yet another surveyor go out there and said he would just have someone measure where the shed needs to be moved using the survey. He says he will personally get involved in this and will give the neighbor 1 week to get his shed moved. I get a call back with him later that day with a junior building inspector, taking direction from the senior inspector while he's out of town. On the line and womp womp, he totally changes his tune. He said I have to get a surveyor to go out there to pin the property line again, but specifically next to the shed. They could never answer me why it was my responsibility to pin a specific spot on my property for a shed that shouldn't exist there in the first place, solely for the benefit of the neighbor figuring out how far back to move his shed to get it into compliance. I'm fuming now, and I also figured out that the senior inspector forgot that I had sent him the third survey showing the encroachment in the spring, which should have begun the penalty violations. He also didn't provide that to the neighbor who needed it and had been asking for it. He just thought I didn't provide the survey. Even the junior inspector was embarrassed and frustrated for his lack of help and thoroughness with my case. At this point, I'm still adamant that I don't want to get another surveyor out there. It will just take too long. I talked to a lawyer that would be less expensive than a surveyor and pretty much said this was a slam dunk win that would enforce the removal ASAP. We're still trying to tread lightly though, so we don't piss off my future home's building inspector too much with the threats of using an attorney, but we desperately need results. My dad's an engineer and comes up with an idea that we present to the junior inspector. We'll use the shed as the property line pin to mark the setback for the neighbor. The shed is shown on the survey and we can see where the property line crosses through the shed, so we just need to measure and mark those places IRL. It's stupidly simple and similar to an idea I mentioned months ago about measuring the setback from the shed, but they approved it. I used the survey's CAD files to set up the measurements for where to pin the property line and 6 setback lines. In my last post, the setbacks were at 12, but changed at some point that month. Another piece of important information that the building inspector forgot to mention to me. When my dad and husband went out to go mark the shed using line of sight, they met up with the neighbor and he was so unbelievably nice. Mind you, we've all been blocked, ignored, had our no trespassing signs taken down, and been told in the past that we should just sell him the property. Now he's making friends with my husband, giving him a tour of his house, talking Scotch, sharing contractor info with him, etc. I'm baffled hearing this and don't trust it but welcome it for the moment. Then my husband tells me the neighbor's wife is rude to him and pissed that we didn't get the additional survey, didn't like that we were doing it this way, etc. The neighbor hushes her and she goes off to pout the rest of the day. My theory is that maybe the wife is the one doing all the blocking and snagging this up. The neighbor apparently had a heart attack earlier this year, so I wonder if she took over his communications. When this first started last year, they mentioned that they tried to buy our property so their son could live on it. Apparently it's just her son, his stepson. I think she drove some of this conflict and he may be giving it up or just changing his tune after his heart attack. Ever since then he's been friendly toward us, which I'm relieved about. So after the pinning of the property line and marking the 6 setback, the building inspector approved our work and then gave the neighbor another month to get this scheduled with a mover and finally moved. After about a month and a half I didn't hear from the inspector, so we gave the town a call. It had been moved. We went forward with our final survey to confirm that our land is clear of encroachments. It's cleared, but the neighbor only moved it 3.6 off the property line, short of the 6 setback. WTAF? I got a letter today from the building inspector saying he passed it and the case is officially closed. I absolutely do not care that it's only 3.6 back instead of 6. I'm just glad he's off my land and can now move forward. But seriously? I don't know how this got approved, but I'm in awe of the incompetence of the inspector. I guess I'll just have to see what all I can get away with too. Anyways, that's my shed saga. Thanks for reading. TLDR, I escalated the issue of my neighbor's encroaching shed to the town, finally reaching the supervisor who sympathized with my year-long frustration over the shed encroaching on our property. Despite previous surveys proving the encroachment, the building inspector asked for yet another surveyor to pin the property, which made no sense. After much back and forth, my dad, an engineer, suggested using the shed itself as a marker for the property line. Surprisingly, the junior inspector approved this. When my dad and husband marked the property line, the neighbor, once uncooperative, was suddenly friendly. After some delays, the shed was moved, though only 3.6 feet instead of the required 6 feet. Despite the inspector closing the case, I'm relieved it's off my land and can finally move forward, though baffled by the whole ordeal. Brother got my fiancée pregnant before our wedding. Now my family wants me to forgive them, but I told them to fuck off and moved away. This is going to be a long story, and it's just as crazy as it sounds. I'll try to be as succinct as possible, but there's a lot to cover here. I don't care if anyone believes this or not. It's so absurd that I need to vent. Also, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. But I will omit any specifics that could identify me to anyone who is unfamiliar with the scenario. I'm 32 years old, and until a few months ago, I was engaged to my 5-year girlfriend. We'll call her Sarah. My younger brother Mike is 29 and has always been the golden kid in our family. To truly grasp the gravity of this betrayal and why it has hit me so hard, I need to give you some background on my family and how we arrived at this point. Growing up, Mike could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, whereas I was continually chastised and punished for minor infractions. This wasn't your average sibling rivalry or subtle favoritism, it was obvious and intense. Mike would break something and I would be accused. He'd start a fight, and I'd get grounded. If we both got straight A's, he'd get a new video game console, and I'd get a pat on the back and a reminder to keep it up. Our parents, Tom and Linda, were constantly making excuses for their actions. Mike's younger, he needs more attention, nor, you're the older one, you should know better. Nor, Mike's just more sensitive, we have to be careful with him. The relentless assault of false standards and gaslighting made me feel useless and despised in my own house. As we grew older, the preference became more evident. When I was accepted into a good college on a partial scholarship, my parents scarcely recognized it. However, when Mike opted to attend community college, they gave him a lavish celebration and purchased him a car to travel in. Never mind that I had been biking 5 miles each way to my part-time job for several years. I moved out as quickly as possible to avoid the toxic environment at home. I supported myself through college by working 2 jobs and taking out loans. Meanwhile, Mike dropped school after 1 semester, citing that college was not for him. Our parents wholeheartedly backed his decision, commending him for knowing himself and not conforming to societal expectations. They even financed his string of failed business enterprises over the following few years. Regardless of how much distance I tried to put between myself and my family, they always found a way to bring me back. Holiday dinners were a nightmare of subtle insults and not so subtle parallels. Oh, you're still in that entry-level position? Well, Mike is considering establishing another business. He's very entrepreneurial. Never mind that I was establishing a secure profession while Mike depleted our parents' retirement money. Despite everything, I tried to keep my friendship with Mike. He was still my brother after all. However, it was always one-sided. I'd reach out and attempt to connect, but he'd either ignore me or find a way to make the conversation into a game he could win. If I was promoted, he would suddenly have a big opportunity coming up. If I started dating someone, he would inevitably be in a serious relationship. I met Sarah while trying to reunite with Mike. She was a friend of one of his short-lived girlfriends and we clicked immediately. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner: brilliant, humorous, kind, and stunningly beautiful. We began dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly satisfied and valued. My folks, obviously, were not pleased. They made sarcastic remarks about Sarah being out of my league and asked what she saw in me. Mike, on the other hand, became quite interested in my life. He was always asking about Sarah, wanting to know everything about her. At the moment, I was just relieved that he seemed to care about things in my life. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags. Sarah and I moved in together after a year of dating, and it was fantastic. We both had solid professions, traveled, and discussed the future. I began to believe that, just maybe, I could have the life I had always desired. A good profession, a loving partner, and perhaps children eventually. I proposed to Sarah on our 4th anniversary. It was nothing fancy, simply a simple supper at home and a moving speech. I was ecstatic when she said yes. We planned to have a long engagement and spend our time arranging the wedding. We weren't rushing. We had our entire lives ahead of us, or so I believed. When we told my family about our engagement, their emotions were diverse, to say the least. My mother put on a fake smile and remarked, "Oh, how nice," in a tone that implied it was anything but. My father grunted and murmured, "Good luck with that," before returning to the television. Mike, however, had the weirdest reaction. He congratulated us, but there was something strange about his smile, almost predatory. I dismissed it at the time, attributing it to my own fears. The following year was filled with wedding plans and job stress. Sarah and I were both working long hours at our jobs to save up for the wedding and a down payment on a home. We hadn't seen each other as much as we used to, but I assumed it was simply a phase. Every partnership goes through difficult times, right? Looking back, I should have seen the indications. Sarah grew distant, always on her phone, smiling at texts from people she swiftly dismissed as business friends. She began going out more with her companions, arriving home late and smelling of wine and cologne. But I fully trusted her. I never considered that she may be cheating, let alone with my own brother. Sarah began acting strangely around 4 months ago. She was moody, irritated, and always nauseous. I was excited by the possibility that she might be pregnant. We hadn't tried, but we had discussed the possibility of having children in the future. I began to plan how I would help her, thinking nursery colors and baby names. Then one night, she sat me down with tears in her eyes and delivered the bomb. She was pregnant, but it was not mine. I was stunned. We hadn't been intimate in a while due to our hectic schedules, but I never expected her to cheat on me. When I asked who the father was, she broke down and mumbled, "It's Mike." My entire universe came crashing down at that moment. Everything I thought I knew, everything I had based my existence on, came crumbling down. I could not breathe. I could not think. All I could feel was an overwhelming sense of betrayal and loss. Sarah attempted to explain, her words coming out quickly between sobbing. Apparently, it began during our engagement party. Mike had approached her and informed her that she was making a mistake by marrying me. He played on her insecurities, telling her she could do better and that he could provide her with everything I couldn't. It wasn't a one-time occurrence. They'd been having an affair for months. I kicked Sarah out that night. I couldn't bear to look at her or be in the same room with the lady who had deceived me so totally. She begged me to forgive her, explaining that it was a mistake and that she loved me. But all I could think of was how many times she had lied to my face and been with my brother while wearing the ring I had given her. After Sarah left, I contacted Mike. I can't recall what I said, it was all a swirl of wrath and pain. He initially tried to play it casual, claiming that it was merely a drunken mistake and had no meaning. But when I questioned him, he became defensive, saying, "Well, maybe if you'd been a better fiancé, she wouldn't have come to me." I saw red. I got into my car and headed to his apartment, determined to do something that would make him regret what he said. I'm not sure what I was planning to do, but when I arrived, our parents were already there. Mike apparently called them first, telling them a narrative about Sarah seducing him and how sorry he was. And you know what? They believed him. They always do. My mother immediately began lecturing me about forgiveness and family, while my father simply stood there with his arms crossed, looking disappointed in me, but not in his beloved Mike. I tried to explain what had actually happened, but they wouldn't listen. They kept telling me that I needed to forgive Mike and support Sarah throughout her pregnancy because family comes first. I lost it. Years of pent-up resentment and anger spilled forth. I told them exactly how I felt about their twisted sense of devotion, how they'd always favored Mike over me, and how they'd never taken my side or backed me. I told Mike that he was no longer my brother and that he had died. I told my parents they could have the son they'd always wanted because they didn't have me. I stormed off, ignoring their cries and pleads. I drove for hours with no destination in mind, only a want to be away from everything and everyone. When I eventually got home, I discovered dozens of missed calls and messages. Sarah begged for another opportunity, as Mike alternated between apologies and accusations. The majority, however, came from my parents, who demanded that I grow up and make amends. I ignored them all, rarely eating and sleeping. I called out of work, depleting all of my vacation days. I couldn't face anyone and couldn't handle the prospect of explaining what had happened. I just sat in my apartment, revisiting every detail of my relationship with Sarah and every interaction with Mike, trying to figure out where I went wrong. It has been 3 months now. I've relocated to a new apartment, changed my phone number and begun treatment to deal with all of this. But my family will not give up. Despite my efforts to cut off communication, they continue to intrude in my life. They've begun showing up at my office, attempting to ambush me and push a reconciliation. My mother confronts me in the parking lot, wailing about how I'm ripping the family apart. My father left harsh voicemails telling me to man up and forgive Mike. Mike himself has attempted to approach me several times, but I've managed to dodge him thus far. They've even dispatched flying monkeys disguised as extended family members to guilt-trip me into forgiving Mike. Aunts, uncles, and cousins I haven't spoken to in years are suddenly calling, telling me how important family is and how I should let bygones be bygones. It's as if they're in another reality where Mike and Sarah made a little mistake rather than a life-altering one. I received a message from Sarah yesterday. She is keeping the baby and intends to co-parent with Mike. And guess what? My parents are overjoyed to become grandparents, forgetting the circumstances and the harsh remarks they used to make when Sarah was with me. The letter was full of apologies and explanations, including how she and Mike discovered real love via this terrible scenario. She even had the nerve to suggest that she hoped we could all become friends eventually for the sake of the child. I am at my wit's end. Part of me wishes to sever ties altogether and start over somewhere else, perhaps moving to another state, changing my identity and creating a new life where no one knows about this mess. But another part of me is so outraged that I want to stay and fight, to show them how twisted up the situation is. I don't know what to do now. The treachery has had an impact on all aspects of my life. I cannot take being alone with my thoughts. I haven't even considered dating again. The idea of trusting someone like that scares me. I've also lost friends over this. Those who believe I should take the high road and reunite with my family. As if I'm terrible for refusing to play happy families with the people who have wounded me the most. The idea of Sarah and Mike raising a kid together, a child who should have been mine, is like a continual stab in my gut. I understand cognitively that the child is innocent in all of this. It is not the baby's fault that its parents are lying, cheating scumbags, but I can't bring myself to feel good about its existence. My parents have begun to discuss how I should be involved in the child's life and how I will become an uncle. The concept makes me feel physically ill. How can I look at this youngster and not recognize the ultimate emblem of my brother's betrayal? So, Reddit, I guess my question is, am I the idiot for refusing to forgive my brother and ex-fiancé? Am I wrong to want to lose relations with my family over this? Any help on how to proceed would be greatly appreciated, as I now feel like I'm drowning in a sea of treachery and gaslighting. I apologize for the lengthy post. If you made it this far, I appreciate it. Writing all of this down has been cathartic in a way. I'm not sure what I hope to gain from sharing this: validation, guidance, or simply the opportunity to scream into the void and have someone, anybody, hear me. Edit. Holy God, this exploded up overnight. Thank you all for your help and advice. I'm astonished by the response, and it will take me some time to look through all of the comments. However, I wanted to answer a few typical questions. 1. Yes, I have consulted with a lawyer about getting a restraining order against my family. It is currently in progress. 2. I don't intend to have any contact with the baby. It's not the child's fault, but I can't become involved without losing my sanity. 3. For those who have inquired about my job, I have already spoken with HR about the situation. They are aware and supportive. They have strengthened security at the front desk and offered me the option to work from home more frequently. I am grateful for their understanding. 4. Many of you have inquired whether I had contemplated relocating to another city or state. It is definitely something I am thinking about. My company has offices in several other cities, so a transfer may be possible. I'm considering the advantages and cons. 5. To those suggesting a DNA test. Sarah acknowledged the affair, and the timeline is consistent. I see no reason to suspect the child is not Mike's. Even if it was mine, I doubt I could ever look at that child without thinking about this. 6. I've been overwhelmed by the number of people who have had similar experiences. It's upsetting to realize how widespread this type of betrayal is, but it's also strangely comforting to know that I'm not alone. Thank you all for being vulnerable and sharing. 7. To the individual who inquired if I had considered taking legal action against Mike for alienation of affection, I looked into it, but it is not recognized in my state. Even if it were, I don't think I have the energy for a legal battle right now. 8. Several people have noted that Mike's behavior appears narcissistic. I've started reading about narcissistic personality disorder, and much of it rings true. It helps me comprehend, but does not excuse, some of his acts. 9. Those who have inquired about Sarah's family are as startled and appalled as one could anticipate. They have cut off communication with her and have reached out to offer me their support. It's a minor comfort, but I value it. 10. To the individual who asked if I'd considered having my own children someday. Honestly, this entire experience has made me wonder whether I want to have a family at all. But I'm trying not to make any major decisions while I analyze everything. I'll keep you updated if anything big happens, but for the time being my focus is on recovering and moving ahead. Thank you again, Reddit. You have helped more than you realize. Your encouragement and suggestions have given me a lot to think about, and they have truly been a lifeline during this tough time. I may not be able to answer every remark, but please know that I read them all and they are making me feel less alone in this. Update. Hello Reddit. It's been approximately 2 weeks since my previous post, and it has been a full roller coaster. First, thank you all for your enormous support and suggestions. I never anticipated my post to go so viral, and going through all of your responses has been both upsetting and oddly reassuring. It's disturbing how regular this type of deception is. The last several weeks have been tough, to say the least. Remember how I said I was working on obtaining a restraining order? That evolved into a huge ordeal. My lawyer filed the paperwork and we had a hearing arranged. I assumed it would be simple, given the proof and the ongoing harassment, but I was mistaken. My parents arrived at the court with their own lawyer, some fancy guy in an expensive suit who likely charges more per hour than I do in a week. They attempted to portray me as the crazy one, claiming I was ripping the family apart over a simple misunderstanding, as if Mike had stumbled and fallen into my fiancé. Fortunately, the judge didn't buy it. She issued the restraining order against Mike and my parents, but only after my mother fell into tears in court and my father glared at me as if I had committed murder. The look on Mike's face, however, I swear if looks could kill, I would be dead. As we were leaving the courthouse, Mike attempted to approach me. My lawyer stepped in between us, reminding him of the newly issued restraining order. Mike merely scoffed and said this wasn't over, and I couldn't hide behind a piece of paper forever. I'd be lying if I claimed his words didn't shake me. But at the very least, I have some legal protection. The job situation has been another nightmare. Remember when I mentioned that my family had been showing up at my workplace? This came to a head last week. I was in a meeting with a customer when my assistant alerted me that my mother was in the lobby and raising a disturbance. Apparently, she had brought a photo album and was attempting to show my coworkers baby images of Mike and me while lamenting about how close her boys used to be. I excused myself from the meeting and went down to the lobby, where I discovered my mother surrounded by a number of uncomfortable-looking coworkers. She was in the middle of relating a story about how Mike and I used to bathe together as toddlers. When she noticed me, she attempted to rush towards me, talking about a baby shower, but I interrupted her. I told her she had to go right away or I would call the police and have her removed for trespassing and breaking the restraining order. Her expression was as if I had slapped her, but after everything they had put me through, I couldn't bring myself to care. Security let her out, and I had to spend the next hour performing damage control with my employer and coworkers. Fortunately, most of them understood, but I could tell some were wondering what kind of drama I was bringing into the office. But it was the fight with Mike that really threw everything off track. Last Saturday, I was in the gym, trying to let out some of my frustration on the punching bag. I was so into my training that I didn't notice someone approaching me until I heard his voice. I swung around and there was Mike, smirking at me as if he hadn't just broken the restraining order. He began speaking loudly enough for anyone surrounding to hear. I ordered him to go before I contacted the cops, but he laughed and said he'd tell them how I had threatened him and Sarah. That was when I lost it. I swiped at him, my first landing on his jaw. He stumbled backward before lunging at me. We ended up on the floor, trading blows like kids again. Except this time there were no parents to separate us, no one instructing me to be the larger person and let Mike win. I got in a few nice hits before the gym staff separated us. Mike's nose was bleeding, and I could feel my own swelling shut. We were both shrieking, trying to get free and get back at each other. The gym manager threatened to call the cops, which ultimately shook me out of it. I grabbed my belongings and fled. I was driving home, still shaking from adrenaline, when I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I responded. Sarah was shouting at me about how I had broken Mike's nose and that he could require surgery. I couldn't help laughing. The ridiculousness of her being upset with me after what they'd done was simply too much. I apologize if I had upset her little boyfriend, whom she had been sleeping with behind my back for several months. She began sobbing, complaining about how anxious she was, how the baby could detect her pain, and how I could be so selfish. I hung up and blocked her phone. The aftermath from the brawl was severe. The news had spread like wildfire throughout our social circle. My phone was flooded with texts from friends and family members, some supporting me, others calling me out for assaulting my poor defenseless brother. Sarah's parents contacted me again, expressing their support for me and their displeasure in their daughter. It was a minor consolation, but at this point, I'll take what I can. The restraining order does not seem adequate anymore. Mike has demonstrated his willingness to violate it, and I'm concerned about what he'll do next. The legal fallout has been a nightmare. My lawyer called me the day after the gym incident. Mike apparently filed assault accusations against me. I recounted what had happened, how Mike had violated the restraining order and provoked me. My lawyer groaned and said we'd fight it, but it might be a tough struggle considering that I threw the first punch. We are in the process of bringing our own charges against Mike for breaking the restraining order. My lawyer is convinced that this will benefit our case, but nothing is guaranteed. I've had to provide police statements, show them injuries on my face and knuckles, and justify defending myself against my own brother, which is humiliating. Mike and I have been banned from the gym for life. I can't blame them, but it's unfortunate that the gym was one of the few places where I felt like I could let out some of my frustration in a healthy manner. My cousin Amy, whom I've always been close to, called me the other day. She's taken a lot of pressure from her family for supporting me, but she's staying firm. She told me about what had been going on behind the scenes. Apparently my parents have been telling everyone that I'm experiencing a mental breakdown. They claim that Sarah and Mike's relationship began after Sarah and I split up, and that I am simply envious and unable to let go. According to Amy, most of the family is skeptical, but some are. It's irritating to know that they're spreading false information about me while I'm attempting to recuperate. Things at work have been, to say the least, difficult. After the incident with my mother in the lobby and the argument with Mike, which went viral on local social media, I can sense my coworkers are on edge around me. My manager called me into his office earlier this week. He began by stating he valued me as an employee and realizes I'm going through a difficult period, but then he dropped the bombshell. He believes it would be best if I took a leave of absence until things calm down. He suggested we call it a personal sabbatical. Paid, of course. I wanted to fight, to tell him that work is the only thing keeping me sane right now, but I knew the choice had already been made. So I agreed, thanked him for his understanding and began to pack up my office. As I was leaving, I overheard two of my coworkers discussing how my brother got my fiancée pregnant. I slammed my office door louder than required as I exited, taking some little satisfaction in watching them jump. I'd be lying if I said none of this was impacting me. I've started taking long drives at night to get out of my flat. Sometimes I find myself parked outside my former place, the one I lived with Sarah, wondering how my life got so messed up. In the midst of this commotion, I received support from an unexpected source. Sarah's younger sister, Emma. Emma contacted me on social media, apologizing for her sister's conduct and giving her support. At first, I was skeptical. What if this was a trick? But after speaking with her, I realized she is equally disgusted by Sarah's behavior as I am. She's been telling me about what's going on in Sarah and Mike's lives. They appear to have moved in together, living as if they hadn't just destroyed numerous lives to be together. Emma claims Sarah has been attempting to portray herself as the victim, crying to anybody who would listen about how she never intended to hurt anyone and how she and Mike are soulmates who found each other against all odds. It makes me sick to my stomach, but I appreciate Emma keeping me in the loop. After all, information is power, even if it is knowledge that I would prefer not to have. The social media environment has been a nightmare. I've always been a rather private person, but this event has thrown me into the unwanted spotlight. Someone, probably one of Mike's friends, posted about our gym feud on a local Facebook page. The post did not mention our names, but it described the incident in enough detail for anyone who knows us to figure it out. The comment area became a battleground. Some individuals defended me, claiming Mike received what he deserved. Others described me as unstable and said I needed to be locked up. I made the mistake of looking over some of the comments one night after having too many beers. A huge mistake. I ended up hurling my phone across the room so hard that the screen cracked. Since then, I've canceled most of my social media profiles. I can't deal with the continuous notifications and messages from folks I haven't spoken to in years who suddenly want to know all the juicy details about my personal life. With everything that has happened, I have realized that I cannot stay in this city any longer. There are too many memories and chances to run into Sarah, Mike, or my parents. I've started looking for internal moves, and there's a promising opportunity in our Seattle office. It's not ideal. I've never been a fan of continual rain, but at this point, I'd move to the moon to avoid all of this turmoil. I haven't made any final decisions yet, but the concept of a fresh start is becoming increasingly intriguing. New city, new apartment, new life, where no one recognizes me as the guy whose brother cheated on his fiancée. My folks have been unusually silent since the restraining order was granted. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to figure out a new method to force their way back into my life. Sarah has been spreading the word about her pregnancy far and wide. Emma tells me she's been posting continuous updates on social media, ultrasound photographs, belly shots and so on, with a message about how blessed she and Mike are and how thrilled they are to start their family. Each new piece of information feels like a fresh wound, triggering the pain just as I thought I was beginning to recover. So that is where things stand right now. 2 weeks ago, I believed my life couldn't possibly get any worse, yet it has. I'm still angry and wounded, but also weary. I am tired of justifying myself. So Reddit, I suppose this is less of an update and more of, I'm not sure, a cry into the void. I'm not sure what I'm asking for right now. Advice, pity, or a time machine that allows me to never introduce Sarah to my brother? Whatever happens next, I will attempt to keep you all informed. Your encouragement has meant more to me than you can realize. It's nice to be reminded that there are still good individuals in the world, even when it feels like everything is full of betrayal and deceit. Final update. Hello Reddit. It's been a week since my previous update, and I'm here with what I expect to be my final post on this whole disaster. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone for their help and guidance throughout this journey. Your writings have been a lifeline in the worst times of my life. So where to start? A lot has happened in just 7 days, and I'm still trying to digest everything. I guess I'll start with the major news. I'm relocating. Yes, I took the risk and accepted a transfer to our Seattle office. It was not an easy decision, but after everything that had happened, I felt I needed a new start. The choice came following an especially difficult day last week. I'd just returned from another meeting with my lawyer regarding Mike's assault allegations when I saw a note in my mailbox. It came from Sarah. I almost tossed it out before opening it, but curiosity got the best of me. Inside, there was an ultrasound image and a handwritten letter stating how pleased she and Mike were about their baby. She went on to say that she hoped I could find it in my heart to be pleased for them, and that the baby would be delighted to have its uncle in its life. I saw red. Before I realized it, I'd grabbed my phone, unblocked Sarah, and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring and I simply let go. I informed her exactly how I felt about her, Mike, and their beautiful little family. I told her she was insane if she believed I'd ever want to do anything with that kid, and that she, Mike, and the baby could all go to hell. It wasn't my best moment, but I felt like I finally shouted everything I'd been keeping back. That's when I realized I couldn't stay in this city anymore. That same night, I called my supervisor and informed him that I wanted to transfer to Seattle. He was relieved, to be honest. I believe he was concerned about how all of this drama would affect the company. He promised to expedite the papers, and by the next morning it was official. I had 2 weeks to collect my belongings and relocate across the nation. My family and social circle were quick to learn about my move. My folks, unsurprisingly, were outraged. They turned up at my place unexpectedly, again breaking the restraining order, to try to talk me out of it. My mother was crying, accusing me of abandoning the family, and my father was furious, yelling at me for being selfish and immature. I didn't participate. I simply phoned the police and had them removed for breaking the restraining order. As they were let out, my mother yelled at me that I would regret it, that family was everything and that I was wasting it. I immediately closed the door and returned to packing. Mike reacted differently. He didn't try to contact me directly, most likely due to the current legal difficulties, but he did write a lengthy message on social media about how some people can't handle seeing others happy, and how he and Sarah were rising above the hate to focus on their new family. It was definitely intended for me, as he attempted to portray himself as the victim. I'll confess it stung to see how many people liked and commented in his favor, but I reminded myself that their opinion is meaningless because they don't know the truth. Sarah's response was the most startling. After our phone talk, she contacted her sister, Emma, who had been keeping me updated on Sarah and Mike's situation, as you may recall. Apparently, my statements had a greater impact than I had imagined. Emma informed me that Sarah had broken down, stating that she realized what she and Mike had done was terrible and was scared of the future. My cousin Amy, bless her, offered to help me pack. She even informed me more about what's going on with the family. Amy told me that my aunt, my mother's sister, had a heated argument with my mother, accusing her of always favoring Mike and pushing me away. My aunt complained that my parents were reaping the consequences of their years of favoritism. I can't say I'm not relieved to hear that someone is finally calling them out for their behavior. My lawyer assures me that my move will have no effect on the legal case, which is currently pending. We're still pursuing charges against Mike for breaching the restraining order and defending the assault accusations he brought against me. My lawyer seems certain that the judge will see through Mike's arguments, particularly considering his history of breaching the restraining order. The fact that I'm going across the nation should also show that I'm not a threat to Mike, which may help get his charges dropped. I don't know if I'll post any further updates after this. Part of starting over is putting the past behind, and as helpful as this group has been, I believe it is time for me to move on from revisiting this narrative. I need to focus on creating my new life rather than obsessing on the past. So I believe this is my final update. Wish me luck, Reddit. I've got a whole new life ahead of me in Seattle, and I intend to make the most of it. Thank you so much for staying till the end. If you enjoy our videos, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day. My family abandoned me because my sister blamed me for her divorce. I ruined her life years later with an email that revealed everything. Almost 7 years ago, my family removed me from their lives and kicked me out of the house. I, 29M, was 22 at the time and lacked the financial stability to rent an apartment on my own. What had transpired was so unexpected that I had no time to prepare, either psychologically or financially. My sister was the cause of all of this. My sister, Hannah, 37F, and I have never been close due to our huge age difference. She married her partner of 3 years, Pete, 39M, when she was 27 and they were married for 3 years. They divorced after 3 years of marriage because Hannah suspected Pete of having an affair with one of my friends. I had been living with my parents after college because I had recently begun working and wanted to save money before moving out. My parents were fine with the arrangement as well, until my sister announced her divorce. She returned home one day, crying uncontrollably, and stated that she had filed for divorce because her husband had been cheating on her for 6 months. Then she threw me under the bus for introducing my friend to him. My friend Emily, 28F, was attempting to gain weight, and Pete, who was a licensed dietitian, volunteered to help her. I had introduced her to him, and it turned out she was the one Pete had been cheating on my sister with. I was startled that this was occurring because, while Emily and I were not particularly close, I thought she was a decent lady who would never become involved with a married man. Furthermore, dishonesty was out of character for Pete as well. He was completely charmed with Hannah and only had positive things to say about her, so I found it quite difficult to think he cheated on her. I had serious reservations, but my parents immediately trusted her and did not question anything, despite the fact that she had no evidence of him cheating. They simply accepted her word for it. I'm not going to hold it against them since they would prefer their own daughter over their son-in-law regardless of who was correct. What I didn't understand was why they so quickly kicked me out simply because Hannah said so. She stormed in one day, had a tantrum, and persuaded my parents to kick me out merely because I had introduced Emily to Pete. She blamed me for destroying her marriage, and my parents agreed for some reason. I was upset and tried to stop my parents, but they refused to listen. They warned me that if I didn't leave, they would kick me out. In only one day, I had lost both my family and my home and had no idea where to go. I was sobbing on the pavement with all my belongings for about an hour before I was able to gather myself and go to a friend's house for the night. I tried phoning them every day for the next 2 days but had no success. My friend was gracious enough to let me stay at his house until I could find an apartment for myself. Unfortunately, my parents were convinced that I was in the wrong and was to blame for the divorce. My parents had actually told me that they were disgusted by what I'd done before kicking me out, which made no sense given I wasn't the one Pete cheated on. They had blocked my number, so I couldn't reach them at all. When I attempted to visit them, my mother threatened to call the cops if I did not leave. After that, I concluded they were serious and blamed me for whatever had transpired. I don't suppose I had any reason to be surprised, given that my sister was always the favorite child. My parents had never intended for a second child, so I was constantly sidelined. While I didn't care for it growing up, I had no idea it would lead to something so significant. Thinking about it now, I suppose I should have seen it coming, but honestly, I don't think anyone in my position could have anticipated something like this. Anyway, for the following few weeks, I tried to figure things out on my own. Since Hannah and my parents had effectively cut me off and I had no way to contact them, I couldn't chat with Pete since he had also blocked me, which made no sense to me. I couldn't find him either because Hannah and Pete had moved out of the house they shared and gone to live with their separate parents. So, with no way to contact anyone involved, I turned to Emily, my last choice for finding out the truth. As I previously stated, Emily and I were not very close, but I had to do what was necessary. I asked to meet with her one day and explain the problem. I questioned her if Hannah's claims about the affair were accurate and she flatly denied it. To be really honest, I believed her. Emily told me that she'd only seen Pete a few times, and just professionally, so there was nothing going on between them. She had no understanding why Hannah would say such nasty things about her. She even told me she'd had a stable partner for a couple of years and was planning to marry in a few months. She even showed me photos. What Emily told me was far more believable than anything Hannah stated. I had no proof, but I knew Hannah was lying about the real cause for the divorce. However, because I lacked proof, I was unable to return to my family, and I could not have returned without it. Back then, I was yearning to return to my family because I missed them so much, despite all they had done to me. With time, I was able to overcome it and move on with my life. I found a place and made my employment the focus of my life so that I could distract myself. I also needed to pay the bills, so it was a better way to cope than sitting around feeling unhappy. I was hurting a lot because I didn't have any other options, but I knew I had to keep on, with or without the support of my family. Years have passed and I am doing a lot better in life. I relocated from my small apartment to a much larger one, and I even proposed to my girlfriend of 2 years about a week ago. Our engagement post proved to be a game changer for me. Just a few days after that post, I received an email out of nowhere that not only revealed the full tale of Hannah's divorce, but also provided all of the answers I needed, along with documentation. My fiancée, Liza, 30F, normally just posted about us on Instagram, but the photo from our engagement ended up on her Facebook feed, where she had a larger audience. It was a public post, so a lot of people saw it, including my ex-brother-in-law Peter. He happened to be someone my fiancée met at a conference a few years ago, since she was a doctor, and she ended up joining him on Facebook, where he found me. It truly is a tiny world, and for the first time, I felt pleased with it. Pete contacted me a few days after we posted, but instead of texting me on social media, he chose to send an anonymous email. He subsequently claimed that he did this so he wouldn't feel strange about what he was doing, as it had been several years since his divorce, and he didn't want to appear like a disgruntled loser who hadn't moved on from what happened. Besides, he was the one who blocked me in the first place. So he felt strange and guilty about getting back in touch with me about something that happened so many years ago. The email contained the entire tale and documentation of what happened 7 years ago. When I finished reading it, I couldn't believe my eyes. Apparently, my sister was the one cheating on Pete, not the other way around, as she had been telling us for so long. Not only was that a massive lie, but she had been cheating on Pete with a friend of mine, just as she had accused him of. My friend Frank, 28M, worked as a clerk at a grocery store near Hannah's house back then. I would never have noticed the connection myself because I had never seen them together. I suppose they had kept it sufficiently under wraps, but not enough for Pete to find out. When questioned, Hannah told Pete that it was all my fault because I had introduced her to Frank and even told her how much he needed her help because he was an aspiring singer and she was a really excellent singer herself. She agreed to help him, and they were in love before they realized it. She even admitted that I was involved and had helped them keep things quiet for so long. All of this was obviously a fabrication, and I had no idea Frank and Hannah were up to anything. Pete was enraged when he found out and blocked my entire family, which he now admits was idiotic of him. However, he was so enraged that he didn't think much about his conduct. Of course, he told me all of this in person because the email was designed to be as impersonal as possible. He did not want it traced back to him, but I figured it out. He had provided copies of emails between my sister and Frank in which they discussed how easy it was to dupe Pete. The emails were filled with declarations of love and plans for where they would meet next. Hannah couldn't refute any of this because she signed off on the emails with her middle name, which few people were aware of. I had her dead to rights. After combing through Liza's Facebook friends, I concluded that Pete must have sent me the email. My gut intuition told me that it had to do with social networking. When I eventually discovered Pete on her friend list, I contacted him. We planned to meet a few days ago, and he informed me that he learned about what Hannah had told her family from Emily, who had met him a few years before. I had told Emily to keep my side of the story a secret, and I was cursing myself when I realized that if I hadn't said that, she would have informed Pete about it, and I would have been able to prove my innocence a long time ago. Anyway, Emily and Pete ran into one another a few years ago, and she ended up questioning him about their divorce. They started conversing and he eventually learned what Hannah had told us. He said that he wanted to speak with me about it and tell me the truth. But he didn't because he felt strange. I swear, if Pete hadn't been so easily embarrassed, my life would have been much easier. I did forgive him though, since I needed his cooperation to completely destroy my sister, and I knew he would agree. Hannah had clearly been lying to my parents in order to secure financial assistance during her divorce, and she had even thrown me under the bus for good measure, knowing that one discussion with Emily would disclose the truth. I couldn't believe someone, particularly someone related to me by blood, could be so selfish. I'm sure Hannah never bothered to correct the record, and my parents had simply accepted whatever lies she'd been giving them during her divorce. She knew that if the truth about her being the cheater was out, she would be in serious danger, and she simply couldn't risk it. That's too bad. The truth had finally come out, and I was going to use it to ruin her life, just as she had ruined mine all those years before. I had not seen my family in 7 years, so I wasn't sure if they still lived in the same house, but they hadn't moved. I checked this with an old neighbor before arriving, and I was relieved to discover that Hannah was still living with them as well. That didn't surprise me because Hannah had always been a couch slug who loathed doing her own job. If she could live with our old parents and have them perform all of her duties, she would. Anyway, 2 days ago, Pete and I unexpectedly arrived at their place. My mother answered the door, and we hardly gave her time to process what was occurring before we walked in. My father and Hannah were also present in the living room. We were back together as one happy family, but only for a short time. Their faces turned nasty as soon as we entered. My father instantly threatened us, saying he'd call the cops if we didn't leave. But I shot back, telling him he could do whatever he wanted once he saw the documents we were about to show them. My parents looked perplexed, but Hannah looked like she was about to vomit and excused herself, heading to her room. I assumed she was trying to flee, but there was no use in doing so. Pete then proceeded to show my parents the divorce papers and screenshots of Hannah and Frank's correspondence, while I described the true story. Pete also told my parents that Hannah had to give up our family heirloom, my grandmother's diamond ring. In the settlement, she had to sell the ring because she couldn't afford to pay him the money. She is a high school teacher. My parents were already terrified by what we had told them, and this was simply the cherry on top. We watched the drama unfold as my father demanded an explanation from Hannah for all that had occurred. Despite all of the evidence against her, she continued to lie and cover up the truth, so my father kicked her out. He packed her belongings for her, handed her the bags and then told us all to leave their house. I didn't need to be told twice before leaving with Pete, as my sister cried and pleaded with my parents to let her back in, just like I did all those years ago. This was excellent karma, and I could not be happier. It's been a few days since then, and my sister just arrived at my house a few hours ago, insisting that I immediately make amends with my parents. I had no idea how she located me, but I informed her that I no longer owed her anything. She had ruined my life once, so I returned the favor and we were now equal. I swear she had no pride left because the moment I said that, she burst into tears and accused me of being a monster. I didn't care about her drama and closed the door as she began to sob uncontrollably. I just put on my headphones and listened to music as Liza, my fiancée, worked in her study, so that neither of us would be disturbed. Hannah eventually departed, but not before leaving a message with a marker on my door, reminding me that I was nothing more than a vengeful monster. To be honest, I see nothing wrong with what I did and have no regrets. But Hannah appears to believe that I am the villain here. I just did to her what she had done to me some years ago, only I told the truth, whereas she did nothing but lie and threw me under the bus. So what do you all think? Am I the hole who ruined my sister's life and got her kicked out 7 years after she accused me of causing her divorce? Update 1. Hannah is still troubling me, despite the fact that she was kicked out a week ago. I had to threaten her with calling the cops after she called me for the 14th time today before she stopped. I'm not sure how she found my phone number and address, but that's not what I'm interested in right now. Hannah is attempting to get sympathy from me since, apparently, a school teacher's salary is insufficient for her to support herself. But I don't think that's the case. She's just furious that she has to seek a home and pay her own rent, energy and groceries now that our parents have booted her out. I don't feel really sad for her. In case you were asking, yeah, I did block her phone multiple times, but I think she's having her pals add me to conference calls, so it's pointless. My parents are as awful, if not worse than Hannah. They found me on Facebook and saw the post announcing my engagement, so they want to be a part of my life again and have expressed a wish to attend my wedding. They have not apologized yet, but for some reason, they expect me to simply invite them to my wedding, which is meant to be a very special day for me. I don't know where these individuals get the courage to say things like this, but I'm not reacting to any of it. Liza and I have had a blast reading their texts because there's no chance they're genuine right now. It's all just very sad for them. Update 2. Hannah showed up at my house again after I threatened to report her for harassment yesterday. I was about to go for work, but she stopped me by flinging herself across the hood of my car and refusing to move until I spoke with her. It was really frustrating, so I ended up contacting the cops this time. They carried her away while she yelled and wept, attempting to paint me as the evil guy. But nobody believed her sad girl play. It took some time to file charges against her, but once I did, I left for work since I didn't want to let this minor incident spoil my day. I was confident that my parents would bail her out because she was their favorite, and I was proven correct. After getting her out, My parents texted me a lengthy message about how I was being far too harsh on them for a honest mistake they made nearly 10 years ago. It was comical since nothing about what my sister and dad subjected me to was either honest or incorrect. They knew exactly what they were doing and were fully aware of how nasty they were. Despite the fact that I had nowhere else to go, they nonetheless sent me out on the street. So now that I can do the same to them, I see no reason to be forgiving or compassionate. I texted my parents back, telling them that they had lost the right to tell me what I could and couldn't do years ago, so they should stop fooling themselves. I have not blocked them yet because I haven't had time to check my messages, but I will shortly. Hopefully, I'll be free of this entire family for good. Update 3. I just got home from work and checked my social media, only to discover that my folks had sent me yet another lengthy message. Liza and I went through it together, and I swear it was the funniest thing I had ever read. I suppose the poor people are unaware that nothing they say or do today will cause me any harm. I am just giggling at how delusional and sad they are. Apparently they still consider us to be family, and they have taken Hannah back in. They've decided that both of their children need a second chance, as if I've ever done anything wrong. So while they have welcomed my sister back in, they also expect me and Liza to come to their house shortly for dinner so that we may settle our disagreements civilly before the wedding. It was bold of them to think that I would want them at my wedding in the first place. We got a good laugh at their dumb message. After that, I wrote back, indicating I had no interest in anything they had asked us to. I was content living away from them, as I had for the previous 7 years. They had shown me that I was better off without them, and I would be eternally grateful for that. I didn't need them anymore, and I didn't want their supposed forgiveness. They may continue to play happy family with my sister as they had done so far. With that last text, I blocked them for good since I no longer wanted the chuckles. I was done, and I was leaving. I'm sure they'll try to contact me in some way soon, but unfortunately for them, I'm done with it. Liza is the only family I need for now, and I'm content with just her. Unfortunately, my dad and sister have never been able to think beyond themselves, and I doubt they ever will. So the next time they contact me, they will speak with my lawyer, and that is a commitment. Am I the asshole for losing it and calling my father a weak, pathetic man in front of his family? Original post, August 18, 2024. My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to Dad about something Mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18 and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation with my family. I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see. And instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him, but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair, and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife and, by his own words, set a good example for unity and forgiveness. And how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, the best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded what always needed to be said onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers, my uncles, said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA with a few YTAs. Relevant comments. Comment 1. It sounds like you finally got to express the pent-up feelings you've carried for so long. While the outburst wasn't ideal, it seems like it was a necessary step towards healing. It's good you're resuming therapy to process this further. OOP. Yeah, afterwards it hit me that although it was very cathartic, it definitely wasn't the most appropriate way to handle it, LOL. Comment 2. He sounds like a gentle, kind and well-meaning person. You directed what is very clearly anger and resentment for your mother at him. It's a bit more complicated than being an asshole or not. You seem to have got some catharsis out of it. I just don't believe he is the one you really wanted to scream at, and from the sounds of it he was also a victim of your mother too. And while he was an adult and should have known better, he obviously didn't. Being non-confrontational isn't some character flaw. It's psychological. And he probably needs therapy himself. Screaming at him and demeaning him actually sounds like something your mother probably did/would do, and I worry about you if that is something that actually made you feel better about yourself. OOP. Yes, I fully admit he was a victim of my mother, but he was a victim who had a support system he never wanted to use. He fully let me be a victim my entire childhood because apparently it was too much effort to try, and to this day doesn't believe he needs therapy. Comment 3. All I can say is based on your post and this interaction is deeply misguided. And you're failing to recognize the truly horrifying thing. You're behaving like the mother you actually should hate. OOP. Oh, trust me, I fully hate her as well, but she is gone, and there is no use in holding a grudge against a dead person. I had hoped though, after his son making him an outsider in his life, his family openly joking face to face about his failings as a father, and his ex-wife draining him for everything he had and making him start over in a one-bedroom apartment, his friends slowly leaving his life one at a time out of embarrassment, that he would have maybe have at least one moment to reflect and maybe consider he should have done things differently. OOP getting therapy due to his past trauma. OOP. Yeah, either way, I need to hop back on the horse for therapy. It'll be good for me. As for my grandparents, I really have had to look back as to how far this pattern of enabling goes back. I know they all did what they could to try and help, but it always seemed like there were times that more active measures could be taken. Times where people should have been far more stern with his addressing his behavior. The older generation on his side are the classical "their family and we stick together no matter what." And I have to think whether his passiveness and enabling is something he picked up on his own or something he learned from his own parents. Update 1. August 20th, 2024, 2 days later. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the YTA. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringeworthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, Not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully to. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's world, because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me to pull apart my story. That was generally asinine, and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something. So it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic families, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her, don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So those parts are fine. Looked kind of like an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed her of my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freakout resulted in my grandmother having a mini freakout of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret about my father's failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really liked it for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in then telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father. And finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public bitching moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. Comments. Comment 1. This is an interesting one. The ability to control one's failures, yes, that's what I'll call your situation, is very powerful. You'll do all right. Comment 2. Congratulations sincerely on owning your actions. No matter how justified, you acknowledged your outburst was uncomfortable for others and likely not appropriate in that setting. It takes incredible strength of character to admit your failings even if you have no idea how else you could have reacted in that moment. That you immediately communicated that to your loved ones is a huge sign of how respectable and genuine you are as a person. I really hope you keep moving forward from this situation with the same mindset. Good luck. Comment 3, NTA. It sounds like you handled things well after what happened. You took responsibility by apologizing to your girlfriend and family, and it's clear you're committed to moving forward by focusing on therapy and healing. It's understandable that you snapped given everything you've been through. It's also clear that your outburst made your family realize the impact your dad's behavior had on you. Don't beat yourself up over it. You've done what you needed to do to move on, and it seems like you're on the right track now. Update 2, September 12, 2024. 3 weeks later. Things have progressed over the last couple weeks and I now have a broader context about my family. Long story short is, there was a lot hidden from me. My father was an absolute asshole to his family, and that's why they treat him the way they do. I got a lot of feedback including the compilation posts on Best of Redditor updates and Boru, and one thing that stood out was people questioning if my extended family could have contributed to the abuse and that's why he was so feeble. And since I was trying to work on my relationship with my family, I figured it was time to ask the hard questions before going that far. I met with my dad's brothers who invited me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity. Dale is the oldest brother. He is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest, self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son. Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So anyways, we met up and I ripped the band-aid off asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I know, and what really is going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and basically summed up that besides what I know, there is a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never told me about simply because it was never the time nor the place to. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young, a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, had a close-knit relationship with his brothers, and meeting my mom in high school junior year made everything go downhill. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his 2 younger brothers and was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him and he even became a little bit of a golden child, but no one minded. The reason his family doesn't respect him is what happened to his behavior when my mother got attached to him. It first started simple. My mother acted rude and distant to the family. They weren't huge fans, but my father loved her so they tolerated it. She became possessive and slowly isolated my father and convinced him to give up his ambitions and goals. The family became concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him and convince him to leave. My father didn't budge and began to lash out. When I was born, my extended family tried to talk to my father about my mother's attitude. My father was angry and threatened to report them for harassment. He was in denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was having fertility issues, my mother messaged her appalling and cruel things. When Dale was pissed and went to talk to my father, he told Dale to drop it and even justified it. Dale punched him and the police almost got involved. Dale hated him going forwards. John grew to hate him when my mother insulted his son due to mild physical disabilities. My father cracked a joke about what she said. John hated him then. Finally, Bill, who always idolized my father, tried to inform my father that my mother made a pass at him and urged divorce. My father responded with a maddening call of utter hate and relationship-ending words. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to repeat her attitude. When they showed signs of abuse to me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie, to accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers and could make their lives hell if they tried, and my father would gladly let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like the grandparents, great and uncles and such, believe in the traditional mindset of family sticking together no matter what, while the generations further down want to keep a distance from him. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more. They told me out. It was all essentially that my father died on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationship with his brothers in the process. And when she died and destroyed him, he probably had to realize it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem to not want to accept the fact that he was lost, or maybe they hope he can fix his life. Who knows? This was a lot to process and was only confirmed by my father himself when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true. He said yes. I would have agreed to maybe some family therapy, but now I have no idea. I threatened to cut off my children's inheritance if they don't become independent by getting real jobs. Am I the asshole for being too harsh? Hi Reddit. I am a 55-year-old father and accomplished company owner. I've been running my own business for about 30 years, and I've done well for myself. My wife, 53F, and I have been married for 29 years and have 2 adult children, Caleb, 28M, and Maya, 26F. My parents left me a considerable legacy when they died, which helped me expand my firm to where it is today. So let's pretend we're financially comfortable. Now, this inheritance isn't just a sliver of change, it's a life-changing sum of money that, in the wrong hands, might easily be wasted. My wife and I have always recognized the benefits of hard work. We did not come from a wealthy family and had to start from scratch. We wanted to give our children possibilities they didn't have, but I'm starting to wonder whether we went too far. I guess that's why I'm here. I need guidance. My parents were not tremendously wealthy, but we did okay. When they died, they gave me a considerable legacy, primarily real estate, which was rather inexpensive at the time. However, I did not use that money until I had earned my own. I wanted to prove to myself, and perhaps to them, that I could make it on my own, even after they left. So I threw my heart and everything into starting my business from scratch, and it is now doing exceptionally well. My wife and I have always lived nicely, and we have ensured that Caleb and Maya had everything they needed as they grew up. They attended the greatest schools, had unlimited opportunities, and never had to struggle as I did. But this is when things became difficult. When I started generating real money, I wanted to offer my children the life I never had. They attended the best schools, dressed the best, and had everything they needed. We established trust funds for them when they were born, so at the age of 21, they had more money in their accounts than I did at the time. Caleb and Maya grew up in an entirely different environment than mine. They never had to work summer jobs or worry about paying for college, and now they're grown-ups relying on trust funds with no actual jobs or ambition. They live in their own little bubble, entirely separated from the outside world. I had always thought that as they grew older, they would desire to make something of themselves, but that has not happened. Caleb spends his days hanging around with friends and spending money on flashy gadgets, whilst Maya is into the influencer lifestyle, attempting to construct a brand around herself with no actual substance. They are both entitled, lazy, and frankly, bullies. They have never had to struggle, and it shows. I adore my children, but seeing them like this is frustrating. They don't seem to understand the worth of anything because they have never had to earn anything. My wife, bless her heart, is far more patient than I am. She keeps telling me they'll figure it out eventually, but I'm not convinced. That is why I ultimately decided to take issues into my own hands. It all came to a climax during a family meal a few weeks ago. My wife and I were discussing our retirement plans, nothing too serious, just brainstorming ideas for what we might want to do after we retire from the business. Caleb and Maya, understandably, were uninterested in the discussion until I indicated that we'd have to decide how to manage the inheritance. Suddenly, they were all ears. I suggested that they take over the company in the future, but they promptly dismissed the idea. Caleb chuckled and stated that he did not want to squander his life working, and Maya made a sarcastic remark about how she is too preoccupied with her career to worry about it. I could feel my blood boiling. I asked them what they intended to accomplish with their lives, and they just shrugged it off. Caleb claimed he didn't need to work because the trust fund was sufficient, while Maya stated that she was building her brand, whatever that means. That's when I understood how far gone they were, and that my biggest error might have been giving them too much too quickly. When I was their age, I was already working hard to earn a living. I was on building sites at dawn, learning the craft from the ground up. My children, on the other hand, appear satisfied to sit back and live off the family's fortune, with little desire to pursue their own success. I attempted to convey that life is more than just coasting on what you've been given, but they didn't hear me. They made it apparent that they had no intention of working a real job or making any substantial contributions to society. It was like speaking to a brick wall. After supper, I could not stop thinking about it. My children are grown adults, but they behave like pampered teenagers. I couldn't shake the notion that I had let them down somehow. I spent years creating something that may prepare them for life, but instead of appreciating it, they simply take it for granted. Something had to change quickly. The next morning, I sat down with my wife and explained what I was thinking. We needed to stand firm, or our children would grow up to be useless people without a purpose. She wasn't delighted at first. As I previously stated, she is more patient than I am, but she finally agreed that something had to be done. At the next family supper, I informed Caleb and Maya that I was modifying the terms of their inheritance. They would no longer receive any money until they worked full-time for at least 2 years. And by real jobs, I mean full-time work that is unrelated to our family business and pays someone other than us. There will be no begging for a position or requesting favors from our pals. They needed to find their own path. The expressions on their faces were priceless. Caleb actually snorted, as if he couldn't believe I was serious, and Maya simply stared at me as if I had a second head. I stressed that this was non-negotiable. They could either step up and demonstrate their ability to succeed on their own, or they could say goodbye to their inheritance. Caleb was the first to react. He slammed his fork down, claiming it was wrong that I was holding their futures hostage. Maya, never to be outdone, jumped in, claiming that I was attempting to wreck their lives because I did not comprehend the current world. My wife attempted to negotiate, saying that we could find a common ground, but I stayed fast. I assured them that this was for their own good, even if they couldn't see it just now. Caleb and Maya left shortly after that. They both stormed out in rage, screaming about how I was ruining everything. My wife merely glanced at me, as if she didn't know whether she should be angry or proud. I told her I wasn't doing this to be harsh. I just wanted them to mature. But even as I said it, I wondered if I had made a big mistake. The aftermath of that dinner was immediate and severe. Caleb and Maya didn't communicate with us for a week, which is rare given how much they rely on us for everything. My wife was split between supporting me and wanting to smooth things over with the kids, but she ultimately stood by my side. She agreed that they needed a wake-up call, no matter how harsh. Caleb finally called, but it wasn't to apologize. Instead, he preferred to dispute. He said I was being unrealistic, and that expecting him to find a real job was setting him up for failure. He told me I didn't realize how difficult it was for his generation, how the employment market had changed, and how he shouldn't be compelled to do something simply to illustrate a point. I heard but did not back down. I reminded him that everyone has to start somewhere, and that if he was serious about his future, he'd figure out how to make it happen. Maya chose a different method. Rather than confront me directly, she attempted to go through her mother. She informed my wife that she was supporting her brand, and that I was hurting her career by pushing her to take a job she did not want. My wife, bless her, attempted to be diplomatic, but she eventually informed Maya that she needed to stop relying on us and start working on her own. Neither one of them took it well. Caleb accused us of being out of touch, and Maya claimed that we were sabotaging her progress. They both threatened to exclude us from their life, which seemed like a slap in the face. But we did not back down. We informed them that this was non-negotiable, and that if they wanted to inherit anything from us, they had to demonstrate their ability to make it on their own. We're now in a standoff. My wife is attempting to maintain order, but the children refuse to cooperate. They've made it clear that they believe we're being unreasonable and they're not afraid to tell us so. Part of me feels terrible, as if I pushed too hard, but another part of me knows this is the correct thing to do. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, even if it means being furious with us for a while. So Reddit, am I in a *** hole for giving my children this ultimatum? I want the best for them, but I don't want to push them away. Did I go too far, or is this tough love just what kids need? Update 1. 1 month later. Things became even more problematic when I posted about what was going on with my children. Caleb and Maya, still enraged by my ultimatum, decided to include the extended family. They went immediately to my in-laws and even contacted several of my cousins, talking about how unfairly they were handled. It wasn't long before I began receiving phone calls and texts from various family members, some of whom I hadn't spoken with in months, all wanting to comment on the situation. My parents-in-law were the first to call. They were understandably anxious and wanted to know what was going on. My father-in-law, who has always been a softie, believed I was being too severe and suggested I soften up with the kids. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, was more encouraging of my decision. She has witnessed firsthand how spoiled Caleb and Maya have become, and she is concerned that if we continue to enable them, they will never learn to fend for themselves. Then my cousins joined in. One of them, who is more like a brother to me, said he understood my point of view but cautioned me from pushing Caleb and Maya too far. He reminded me that our generation was raised with different ideals, and that I might need to be more aware of the pressures that young people face now. Another relative, a successful lawyer, accused me of attempting to control my children's life and advised me to let them sort things out on their own, even if it meant they failed. Despite the conflicting perspectives, I remained steady. I stressed to everyone who inquired that this was not about controlling Caleb and Maya's lives. It was about ensuring they had the necessary abilities and mindset to achieve on their own. I wasn't asking them to become CEOs overnight, but rather to demonstrate that they could hold down a job and contribute to society. I knew it wouldn't be easy for them, but I felt it was necessary. Caleb and Maya did not take this lying down. Caleb, the more rebellious of the two, decided to start a business. He claimed he was going to start day trading since he had read online about people making a lot of money doing it. He poured his little funds into it, but within weeks, it was evident that he was in over his head. He lost practically everything and then had the audacity to phone me begging for more money to invest. I told him no, that this was not the type of work I was talking about. He hung up on me, and we have not spoken much since. Maya went a different route. She began attending networking events, which appear to be little more than parties where people drink cocktails and discuss their brands. She said she was developing vital connections to help her advance her profession, but I knew otherwise. It was just another method to avoid doing a real job. When I asked how these events were translating into real opportunities, she became defensive and accused me of not believing in her. I informed her that I believed in hard work rather than playing pretend. At this point, it's evident that they're both looking for loopholes in my ultimatum. They want the inheritance without having to work hard, and it's annoying to watch them spend time on these half-baked plans. But as much as it hurts to see them struggle, I'm not backing down. Caleb and Maya began to make less phone calls as the weeks passed. When they did, the conversations were typically heated. They both attempted to guilt-trip my wife and me, claiming that we were abandoning them and that they couldn't believe we were prepared to destroy our relationship for money. Caleb even threatened to cut us off altogether if we did not back down. My wife was upset, but I could tell she was beginning to see things my way. She had always been the peacemaker, but even she was becoming upset with their behavior. We both realized it wasn't just about the money. It was about their futures, and we couldn't allow them to go down this road. Still, it was difficult to hear our children threaten to break ties with us, especially because all we wanted was for them to flourish on their own. At one time, Maya attempted to turn several of our friends against us. She claimed that we were unrealistic, didn't understand the new employment environment, and were setting her up for failure. Some of our acquaintances, particularly those with children of similar ages, sympathized with her, complicating matters even more. We began to receive unsolicited advice from individuals who had no idea what was going on, and it seemed as if the entire world had become engaged in our family drama. Despite this, my wife and I remained on course. We understood that succumbing now would only reinforce the behavior we were attempting to change, but it was difficult, really difficult. And I couldn't help but worry if we were doing the right thing. We decided to reduce Caleb and Maya's monthly allowances to make things more realistic for them. Until now, they had been receiving a rather large sum from us each month, which they spent for everything from rent to shopping sprees. But if we were serious about teaching kids to stand on their own, this had to cease. We also canceled the credit cards associated with our accounts. If they wanted to continue living the way they had been, they'd have to figure out how to pay for it themselves. The reaction was quick. Caleb called, enraged, claiming that we were attempting to bankrupt him. Maya wrote a lengthy emotional email accusing us of being uncaring and said that she didn't know how she would survive without our help. My wife and I read it together, and while it was difficult to watch her sad, we knew it was the push they needed. We responded by assuring her that this was a normal part of growing up and that we were certain she would figure it out if she tried. For the first time, they were confronted with the reality of limited cash. Caleb could no longer afford his expensive hobbies, while Maya had to cut back on her socializing. They were both angry, hurt, and bewildered, but we could only hope that this was the tipping moment. It was a tough love approach, but we felt it was the only way to get through to them. So, Reddit, what are your thoughts? Are we going too far, or is this just what they need? I'm staying solid in my decision, but it's taking a toll on our family. I would appreciate any help or insights you can provide. Update 2. 6 months later. Hello Reddit. We appreciate all of your help and advice over the past few months. It's been a difficult journey, but I thought it was time to update you on what's happened since my last post. First, I'd like to add that I took several of your comments seriously, particularly the ones about mixing tough love with emotional support. So this is what has been going on. Let us start with Caleb. He was missing for a bit after our most recent major disagreement. He wasn't returning calls, and when we did speak with him, it was evident he was still upset over the whole thing. I knew he was going through a difficult period, but I also realized he needed to figure things out for himself, so we gave him space. Caleb realized around 2 months after the ultimatum that he couldn't keep coasting on his remaining savings. With no income and no help from us, he was compelled to look for work. He initially sought to apply for high-paying opportunities in industries where he had no experience, but when those didn't work out, he had to lower his expectations. He eventually got a job at a local manufacturing business. It wasn't flashy, and it wasn't what he wanted. But it was a legitimate job with genuine hours and a real payment. The first few weeks were tough. Caleb frequently complained about the physical effort, the early mornings, and the monotony of the job. He despised every minute of it and made sure we knew. But my wife and I remained supportive, encouraging him to persevere and reminding him that everyone has to start somewhere. He gradually, and I mean slowly, began to acclimate. He began to take pride in his work, and while he would never confess it to me, I could tell he was beginning to recognize the significance of what he was doing. He's been at the facility for nearly 4 months, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's no longer considering quitting every day. He's even started saving a little portion of his paycheck, which he'd never done before. It's a little step, but it's progress, and I applaud him for sticking to it. It's evident he's not quite there yet, but I'm seeing hints of the guy I always knew he could be. Now on to Maya. Her journey has been unique, but equally tough. After we took away her stipend and canceled her credit cards, she tried to keep up appearances for a while. She'd continue to brag on social media about her fantastic life, but it was clear that things were falling apart behind the scenes. Maya eventually understood she couldn't keep pretending things were fine. People stopped attending networking meetings when they discovered she couldn't actually provide anything important in return, and parties ceased being enjoyable when she couldn't afford to keep up with the crowd. It was a terrible wake-up call for her, and for a time, she appeared lost. But then something interesting occurred. One of the people she met at a networking event mentioned an entry-level position with a marketing agency. It wasn't enjoyable, and it certainly wasn't the influencer lifestyle she'd been looking for, but it was a job. After some coaxing and encouragement from my wife, she applied and was hired. She had a difficult first several weeks too. Maya was not used to answering to anyone and struggled to acclimate to the job's structure and deadlines. She contacted us several times in tears, unhappy with her supervisor or overwhelmed by her task, but like with Caleb, we remained supportive while telling her that this was part of growing up. She gradually regained her footing. She's been with the firm for approximately 3 months, and while she still doesn't love it, she's starting to understand the importance in what she's doing. She even discussed taking some courses to hone her talents, which is a significant step for her. With both Caleb and Maya now working, our family's dynamics have begun to evolve. Our once stressful and unpleasant family reunions have gradually become more relaxed. There is certainly some stress. Caleb and Maya aren't delighted with their new circumstances, but there is also a sense of relief. My wife and I have tried to be there for them as much as we can without giving in or bailing them out, and I believe they are beginning to appreciate that. Interestingly, Caleb and Maya have begun to bond via their common professional experiences. They have always been close, but this is different. They are commiserating about their work, sharing anecdotes about their difficulties, and even giving each other advice. It's good to see them supporting one another rather than relying solely on us for everything. Our extended family has also begun to come around. The family who initially condemned our decision are starting to recognize the advantages. They've seen the changes in Caleb and Maya, even commenting on how much more adult they appear. My wife and I still have moments of doubt, but we are increasingly confident that we made the right decision. I won't lie, witnessing my children suffer has been difficult. There have been times when I wondered if I made the right decision. But seeing them gradually begin to figure things out has been fulfilling in its own way. I know they aren't out of the woods yet, but they are making progress, which is all I can ask for. So that's where things are now. I know this trip is far from over, and there will be more hurdles ahead, but I am cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all of your advice and assistance. It's been quite helpful as we navigate this difficult circumstance. I'll keep you all updated if there are any noteworthy developments. In the interim, any suggestions for how we can continue to help Caleb and Maya without coddling them would be very welcomed. Update 3. 1 year. Mark, hi Reddit. I am back with another update. It's been about a year since the whole affair began, and I wanted to explain where we are now. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who has followed our tale and offered advice. It's been a difficult year, but one of growth for all of us. Recently, we held a large family gathering to review how things were going. Caleb and Maya were both present, as was my wife, and it was the first time we'd all sat down together since the inheritance ultimatum began. I'm not going to lie. I was nervous. I wasn't sure how they'd react or whether they'd be willing to discuss their development. But to my surprise, the chat went better than I had anticipated. I began by telling them how proud I was of the progress they'd made over the last year. Caleb has stuck with his job at the manufacturing factory, and while he doesn't particularly enjoy it, he has made significant progress. He's acquired a strong work ethic, and his supervisor even told me, via a common contact, that Caleb has been doing an excellent job. He started saving money and is thinking of taking some night classes to better his skills. Maya, on the other hand, has begun to establish her foothold in the marketing world. She's still at the same company, but she's taken on additional responsibilities and even directed a few small projects. She's started talking about her job with pride, which I hadn't heard her do before. She's also enrolled in several online classes to expand her knowledge, and she's starting to realize the importance of working her way up rather than expecting everything to come easily. We discussed the inheritance circumstances again to ensure that everyone was on the same page. I underlined that the terms remained unchanged, 2 years of steady, meaningful work before they could get their inheritance. Caleb and Maya both accepted this without fight, which was a huge relief. It's evident they're not happy about it, but they're not fighting it as hard as they were before. As we were winding up our talk, something unexpected happened. Caleb added that his employer had been speaking with him about a promotion. It's not a great leap, but it would entail more responsibility and a higher salary. He appeared shocked that he was being considered, but I was not. I've witnessed the changes in him over the past year, and I'm not surprised that his efforts are being recognized. He's still sorting things out, but for the first time, he's discussing his job as a long-term profession, rather than something he's doing to meet inheritance requirements. Maya also had some news. She's discovered a genuine joy for her marketing career, particularly the creative aspect. She's been discussing with her supervisor the prospect of moving into a more specialized function, and she's even considering returning to school to pursue a degree in marketing. This is a significant departure from the Maya of a year ago, who was more concerned with her social media following than with any genuine career path. It's been incredible to witness these developments in them. They're each starting to discover their own path, and while they still have a long way to go, they're making progress that I never imagined possible a year before. Our family dynamics have improved as a result of all of this, which has been both surprising and enjoyable. There's a true relationship today that didn't exist before. Our interactions are deeper, more meaningful, and less about money or material possessions. Caleb and Maya are beginning to perceive us as more than simply wealthy parents. We are individuals who care about their futures and happiness. We've also witnessed an improvement in Caleb and Maya's relationship. They'd always been close, but there was always a competitive edge between them, driven by who could obtain the most from us or live the most extravagant lifestyle. They now support one another in ways they never did before. They've even talked about collaborating on some side projects, combining Caleb's practical skills with Maya's creative abilities. It's early days, but it's encouraging to see children thinking about how to help one another rather than relying solely on us. This event has also brought me and my wife closer together. We've had to make some difficult decisions as a team, and while we haven't always agreed on everything, we've learned to communicate more effectively and support one another through the obstacles. It's been a learning process for both of us, as parents and partners. So, Reddit is where we're at. I am optimistic about the future, but I am aware that we are not yet out of the woods. The coming year will be critical, especially as they reach the 2-year milestone of the inheritance conditions. We'll continue to assist them as best we can, and I'll keep you all updated on how things proceed. Any ideas or suggestions on how to sustain this momentum would be highly appreciated. Update 4. Final update. Hi Reddit. It's been 2 years since I initially sought your assistance, and I wanted to provide you with one final update. It's been a long trip, and I can't thank you enough for all of your help and advice along the way. This experience has been tough, but also quite gratifying. As we approached the 2-year mark, the family felt a sense of expectancy. Caleb and Maya were both aware that the inheritance circumstances were about to be reviewed, and while they didn't say much about it, I could tell it was on their minds. They'd both come a long way since that fateful supper where I first laid down the law, and I was curious how they'd take this final exam. A few weeks before the 2-year mark, we held another family meeting. I wanted to sit down with Caleb and Maya, learn about their experiences over the last 2 years, and discuss what happens next. My wife and I were both nervous and eager. We'd seen so much progress in them, but we knew this was a key time. When we sat down for the meeting, I began by acknowledging how far they had gone. Caleb and Maya both appeared scared, but I could see pride in their eyes. They knew they'd worked hard, and I wanted to make sure they knew we noticed and appreciated it. Caleb was the first to speak. He discussed his time at the production factory and how he came to see work as more than simply a means to a goal. He's been promoted twice since my last update, and while it's still not his ideal job, he's beginning to recognize the value of hard effort and consistent advancement. He's also begun to take on some side projects, utilizing the talents he's gained at work to create something of his own. It's evident that he's considering his future in a way he never has before. Maya then told her story. She is still with the marketing agency, but her work has become more specialized, with an emphasis on creative projects. She's also taken some college courses in marketing and design, and she's discovered a genuine enthusiasm for her profession. Maya has always been creative, but now she's turning that creativity into something solid, something that could lead to a real job. She's pleased with her accomplishments and optimistic about the future. After they were finished, my wife and I discussed our ideas. We told them how proud we were of their growth, how they had overcome obstacles and learned from them. We discussed how important their trip has been and how it has prepared them for whatever is ahead. Then I surprised them. I informed them that due to their growth, we were increasing their inheritance. I stressed that this was more than just a reward for completing the 2 years. It was a recognition of the individuals they had become. They were astonished and, I believe, overwhelmed, but largely thankful. For the first time, I felt as if they genuinely appreciated the importance of what they were receiving. Not just the money, but also the lessons they acquired along the road. So where are we currently? Caleb and Maya are significantly better off than they were 2 years ago. Caleb is still working at the company while also working on his own projects, and he is considering starting his own firm eventually. Maya is excelling at her marketing agency and is thinking about obtaining a degree full-time. They've both matured tremendously, and I couldn't be more proud. So this is my final sign-off. Thank you for following our story and helping us along the road. If I could leave you with one piece of advice, it would be to never be hesitant to challenge your children, no matter how difficult it may be. Sometimes the most difficult decisions lead to the greatest growth. Good luck to everyone, and I hope your own parenting experiences are as rewarding as ours have been. Take care, Reddit, and who knows, perhaps I'll return someday with another story. Until then, cheers.